Today is Friday in California. Oh. Shoot. What? Stop looking at me like that. You guys don't know today is Friday? Today is Friday in California. No green fit? I got a green screen, man. It ain't gonna work. Boyle. The screen right there is green. Screen right there is green. It's been green the entire time. Been green the whole time. You can't see it though. Oh, it's a new weekly challenge. Minmus goes on for a little bit longer, as I think this is the last day, but it might stretch into next week. But here, let me show you. Let me show you. Oh no, Galleon! I'm talking about the screens. The screens. Those screens. They're green screens with projectors on. See, look, I can. See, we can knock on the. Damn it! It's not lined up. We can. See, you can knock on the table. See, isn't that? Here. Just look at this. Just look at this.
Today is Friday in California.
Huh?
Choose.
Yeah, see? Today is Friday in California. He's not wrong. Wanted to correct something I said earlier. It's not lockjaw. I'm getting a tiny gap patch. You're getting taken to Gapplebee's. I knew you watched K-dramas, but today is Friday in California. Huh? All right. Well, no, you'll be around. You'll be around, man. I'll see you on the other side. Be good. I wish your surgeon the best of luck. A rather significant Friday in Boston. That's right. That's right, laddie. That's right. Today is the day where we drink coffee. Lots of coffee. And then also, we get a lot of Guinness. Primo took all my Guinness, and I'm not happy about it. You see Mullet's new big block? Dude, how many liters do they want in that thing, Dink? How many liters do they want? Yes. 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 Primo took all the Guinness, S-Master, but she took it to cook corned beef hash. So, well, not corned beef hash, it's just corned beef. Yeah, we cooked the corned beef in Guinness. It's dude, don't knock it. It's really freaking good. Primo is part Irish, so she wants to celebrate the St. Patrick's Day. I don't do that. I mean, I do, but also I don't. But I'm not gonna. I do like Guinness. This windshield is dangerous and obstructive, but I do like Fig Newtons. The fact that they spent the last week staying up until 5 finishing Mullet is ridiculous. Word. You're part Irish? I'm not at all. I'm not Irish at all. I'm like 90% Italian. But I did grow up in Boston. So yeah, grew up around a lot of Irish people. Like actual Irish people, not like I have a Notre Dame shirt on. I'm like, there's actually people from over there that live here. In fact, the guy I bought this house from is from Ireland. Yep. So, neighbors, Irish, just everywhere. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. I do like Guinness. I like Guinness a lot. Ingram. Hey, Jay, I'm getting to teach history as a tutor to a high school age son of a friend, loving every minute of it. Dude, word. That's awesome, Ingram. Nice. That's cool, man. What history are you doing? Hooded. What's up, man? I was about to combine Hey Hooded into one. Hooded! Holy! All right, you're doing world history. What part of world history? Modern world history? Ancient world history? Are we talking classics here? Or are we talking Roman Empire? Talking Middle Ages? Renaissance? What are we talking about here? Yes. Yes, and yes. That's a lot of history to cover, man. All right, hold on. Today is Friday in California. Victorian steampunk? Huh? It's so much fun. The kid's got a very quick mind. All of human history at once. That's a lot of violence. It is a lot of violence. Oh yeah.
Discovery.
I mean, I like to think that we got a lot of the violence out of the way in the last century. I think that's enough violence for couple of centuries. Like, we don't need to do that for a little while. But, I mean, here we are. But also, I think we did it enough. You know? It's never going to be enough, is it? Anyway, that's messed up. Anyway, username, hey, 24-month resub. What's going on? No more violent than a Kerbal launch. Hey, my Kerbal launches work. And they didn't work yesterday. The violence is just more efficient? What? See, here's my thing about violence. All right, I get it. It happens. You know, we're not going to live in some ideal world. I get it, right? But I always thought, you know, anyone can destroy something. That's easy. That's easy to do. That's easy. But it takes skill. It takes skill and true training of your mind to make something like that. That takes skill. All right? That right there, that takes skill to make. Any idiot can destroy this thing, right? Anybody. With enough explosions, you could level anything, right? But it takes skill to build. It takes skill. And that skill is honed over, I mean, in this, to put kind of a modern spin on it, that skill is honed over decades. I always thought that was cooler. Don't get me wrong. I like, you know, explosions just as much as the next guy. In fact, the thing that we talk about here the most is a thing that takes an explosion and actually forces it out of a nozzle, right? But it takes skill to build something. Just, I don't know. Kind of fits into how I think about things. I mean, designing a cruise missile takes a lot of skill too. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. No doubt. Iron Man is cool, but the guy that built his house is cooler. Do you think all the space organizations from around the world would get together on a single project? I mean, the closest thing we have to that, Yudi, is the ISS. But it's possible. Yeah, S-Master. Yeah, I do remember that. About KSP2, did you experience any issues regarding inverted control surfaces? Yes, I did, Jazos. Something is weird with the control surfaces. My guess would be that whatever they patched with there was some notes in the patch about fixing control surfaces, right? And if you try to launch a craft with that new code, this is a guess. If you try to launch a craft with that new code, it screws up your control surfaces. The double pickle does not fly. It won't do it. It won't fly. I was trying to figure out yesterday if that was an arrow problem, or if it was an arrow problem, or if the craft file is actually screwed. And I'm coming down in favor of the craft file being screwed, so we might have to make it again. But that's another story. Yeah, Ingram, building is... Yeah. Dude, the fact that there's no other species on this earth that can do what we do, all right? And I firmly believe, not to get a little preachy here, but I firmly believe that if you build something, part of you is now imparted onto whatever you built, right? Because if I, for instance, was going to build a space shuttle in Kerbal, right? And one of you guys were going to build a space shuttle in Kerbal, that would not come out the same. They could do the same exact thing, but it wouldn't come out the same. You impart a little bit of yourself on something every time you build something. And that right there is sacred in my mind. I don't know why. It's a weird thing. It's a weird way to look at things, but, you know, you make something. Like, I did the work on fixing the 97. Part of the 97 is... Part of me is on the 97, like, because I put that thing back together and I drove it home, right? I built it. I didn't build it, like, I didn't manufacture it, but I put it back together. So the reason that truck exists in the state that it does is because of me. See what I mean? It takes skill to do stuff like that. Skill issue. You know, wrecking things is easy. That's easy to do. I don't know, just kind of how I look at things. And I think it's important to look at history in that context. That's why you won't make your shuttle public. Seems to be related with the longitudinal axis you place the wings. Check this 50-second clip proving it. Yeah, I see that. I'm skipping through it. Nice plane, by the way. Yeah, that's a little weird. Building things that wrecks things takes skill. Yeah, Limprod, I'm not gonna sit here and say that like a missile which knows where it is doesn't take skill to make, right? It absolutely does. But also, I'm fairly confident that most people that design cruise missiles, ICBMs, are designing them with the understanding that they'll never get used, right? Or if they have gotten used, we're screwed, right? It's like making a roll cage in a car. The guy that makes the roll cage takes skill. That takes skill to make the roll cage. But if the roll cage ever gets used, that means the car is destroyed. You hopefully put a roll cage in a car and never, ever, ever hope it gets used. Right? So, once again, building things that wreck things does take skill, but I'm pretty sure most people build that stuff with the intention that it's not going to destroy something. Like building an ICBM, for instance. You know? Exactly, Wheat. That's why, once again, it just feeds into this whole thing. Building things takes skill, man. It takes skill. It's really easy to wreck stuff. Building things takes skill. It takes years of training. And now, don't get me wrong. I guess supposedly in the modern age, like operating a fighter jet, that takes years of skill, right? But yeah, Ingram, I think if you look at history in that context, history is very enlightening. You know what I mean? It's very enlightening. But yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool that you get to teach. Teaching is fun. There's nothing, dude. One of the biggest rushes that I get on this stream is teaching somebody something new. It's such a damn good feeling. The dopamine hit is unbelievable. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel good knowing that I helped somebody figure something out. It's one of the driving things of why I'm still here. It's such a good feeling, man. The greatest genius in history was a man named John Snow, who invented the science of epidemiology. John Snow. Best teachers are lifelong students, indeed. John Snow's science saved more than in human history. I don't know, man. I think penicillin is up there. Penicillin is definitely... Yeah, Alexander Fleming, the guy that invented penicillin, or figured out the application of penicillin as an antibiotic. Yeah, that guy has saved a lot of people's lives. What about the guy that invented the toilet? Seriously, you know the guy that invented the toilet? His last name was Crapper. I'm not kidding. Not a joke. Thomas Crapper. I'm serious. It sounds like a joke, but if you Google Thomas Crapper, literally a picture of his toilets. Yeah, Thomas Crapper. Why do they call them Johns and not Tom? Well, they call them Crappers. You gotta go right down to Crapper. See? The original Crappers had the tank up high because they thought that's what you needed to make the pressure to get the poo out, but turns out that all that's doing is increasing pressure on the pipe. It doesn't necessarily increase pressure down here. You can get pressure if you put the bowl right there. Acton, 29-month resub. No. We call them Johns because, guys, haven't you seen Robin Hood Men in Tights? We call them Johns because there was a medieval king that did some wrongdoing, or a medieval prince that did some wrongdoing, and the king, because of his wrongdoing, said that all toilets should be called John after that. Henceforth, all toilets shall be called Johns. No! Yeah. You guys seen Robin Hood Men in Tights? It's a documentary. Be right back. Gotta hit the Elon. Wait. Don't GURPS out on me, man. My grandma had a toilet like the one you showed with the high tank. That's cool, failures. Right on. All right, so okay, two things today. We're going to do the Minmus Challenge. We got 2 rocket launches today, dudes. And then I'm kind of waiting for Whitney to pop in. So if you guys don't know Whitney is a French STEM streamer. She does basically the same thing that I do with KSP. Whitney, she posted a thread today. I'll ask in English and French, but I'd like to improve my building level in KSP and start doing interesting things. Do you guys have some advice for me? And, yes. Why, yes. Yes, I do. So if Whitney comes around, guys, I might need to take a little bit of a detour and start talking about craft hierarchies and how they work. Yes. My man. So, yeah. What do you want to improve on? I might be able to help. So Whitney says, she says, I think it's the fact that I can only do basic rockets in KSP, and I'm a bit stuck with those, and I don't know how to step up to do massive fun or KSP-like designs. I don't know how to use the parts to go further into the building process. Okay. Hierarchies. I did not feel like typing that out in an entire Twitter message, so I said just come on the stream. So if Whitney comes around, we might have to load up KSP 1 for a second. I might have to start teaching about vessel hierarchy. It's not the most fun conversation to have, but I swear vessel hierarchy will make you a better builder in KSP 1 and KSP 2. We did figure out the other day when we made that Kraken Tech vessel, we figured out the other day that vessel hierarchy still exists. It exists in KSP 2. So that's an important thing to understand, and it's an important thing to learn if you don't want the Kraken to eat whatever you're trying to launch into space, provided there's no bugs. Now, I will say, in retrospect, that patch yesterday, oh my goodness. We got some problems with the inverted control surfaces, like what Jazos was saying a second ago in chat, but also the QOL improvements are insane. I actually talked with a little bit more of the devs last night, and dude, Nate introduced me to the QA lead. We're gonna be talking more in the future, I think. Yeah, know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I'm here for it. I've been wired after playing King in the Castle, la 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 la. An absolutely riveting game. It has more twists than Game of Thrones, and it was so exciting. Right on, man. There's nothing like getting lost in a good video game. QOL, quality of life. Yep. So yeah, if Whitney pops in, we need to teach. We gotta purvey the fine Kerbal building aesthetic. Okay. We gotta keep going with that. We are purveyors of fine Kerbal craft file building. What's new in the patch? Zemus, dude. Where to start? I don't even know where to start. Honestly, the patch notes detailed 289 changes to the game. Most of them pretty significant. It was such a gigantic freaking patch, dude. Like, I knew the devs gave a crap. Like, I knew that they cared. I talked to them most of the time, right? I didn't think they gave that much of a frick. Like, that, I will say this once, I'll say it again. That is a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Like, props to the freaking QA team. That is a lot of stuff to verify that it's fixed, figure out problems in the first place, verify that it's fixed. The coders to communicate with the QA team to make sure that everything is working. Like, that is an insane amount of work. And it's not like something that you can measure, like, okay, it's not like you can scrum this, right? If we're going to talk software engineer, like, okay, you can assign a bug to somebody, but they have to QA test the bug. They have to verify that the bug is repeatable, right? And then they have to what do they have to do after that? They have to verify that it's repeatable, and then they have to, communicate what they think the bug is to the software engineers, and the software engineers have to go and fix the code, and then they have to send it back to the QA team. Like, dude, that is an insane amount of work for a 20 person QA team. Like, that's absurd. It is an absurd amount of work. And you know what, man? That just makes me happy. I'm feeling a little vindicated right now because, when the game came out, that's the first thing that I said. Look, it might be a little rough around the edges right now, but the team at Intercept and the team at Private Division, I've spoken to these people face to face. And guys, like, for what that's worth, right? Like, okay, all right, good, you've done that. Dude, I have a decade of experience in customer service. I worked a lot of retail when I was younger, a lot. Best Buy, delivering pizzas, waiting tables, busting tables. I've done a lot of forward-facing stuff. And, when you get into sales and stuff, you learn how to read people. And, like, I'm pretty good at it, right? Like, the vibe that I did not get one disingenuous vibe from the dev team ever. 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 Like, ever. When you get into hospitality and sales like that, you got to learn how to read people. Like, if the customer's pissed, you should, you got to play off that, right? I got pretty good at reading people through like a decade of retail experience, right? And also, that's kind of the reason why I'm not introverted, because if you're an introvert and you're in customer service, that doesn't end very well. You have to be, so that beat the introversion right out of me. Still socially awkward at times, so you're still a nerd. Hey, Whitney. There you go. But I did not get one disingenuous vibe from this entire development team, any one of them. And I can say that pretty honestly. So, like, they care, and this shows that they care. Like, that is an insane amount of work. And they're already planning patch 2, dudes. Nate said it in the dev notes yesterday. They already have patch 2 in the roadmap. And, dude, Nate's running a pretty tight ship, man. I'm very impressed. That's a lot of work to do. It's a lot of stuff to organize, considering that some of the team is remote. On top of all that, that's tough, man. It's a tough thing to do. The last patch doubled my FPS. Yeah, man. They fixed the fuel flow optimization. Hayes, I was talking with Repo last night. If you guys don't know who Repo is, he comes in here from time to time. Repo is, he works on the software team for KSP too, because I know him because he was the lead developer for KSP 1 for a long time. And he... The reason that same vessel interaction is in the game is because that was a spite patch. Because I said it couldn't be done, and he said, oh yeah? All right, fine. I'll put it in the next patch. Shut up, EJ. And I'm like, well, you know what? I've never been happier to be proven wrong. Don't tell a software person it can't be done. That did not work in my favor. Kind of backfired in my face. But also, same vessel collision allowed us to make cool stuff with the launch pads and whatnot. So, just saying. I really appreciate how involved they are in the game. They care so much. Yeah, Whitney. Absolutely. They care. Whitney, I've talked to these people face to face. And dude, it's something, like, it's one thing talking to people over the internet, right? Like, this is not the same. Like, text on a screen is not the same as talking to somebody face to face and reading that person. You know what I mean? Tell him colonies can't be done. Hat-trick, the truth of the matter is that colonies are already in the game. It's just a feature that's locked out right now. The game was in shambles, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah, the point one, the release was pretty buggy, but we figured out a way around it, right? We figured out ways around it. That's what I like doing. I like figuring out ways around it to give you guys good content and also troubleshooting the game at the same time. We bug squash while we figure out ways to do things. And I got the game working pretty good in point one. 1.1 is going to be way easier, except that inverted control surface thing, but that's another story. What do you mean? It absolutely worked in your favor. Do it more. I had a pretty good conversation with Repo last night, dude. So those avenues are open, which is good, man. That's good. Those avenues are open. So I can't believe, like, this is one of the most transparent development teams ever. Like, how often do you get a note once or twice a week from somebody on the dev team and a note every patch and every release from the creative director, from Nate. Like, I know he typed those. I know he did those up. Nate's a beast, man. He works really freaking hard. Like, some real alpha stuff, dude. Like, when that guy's on a roll, it's like when I'm on a roll explaining something about space. You're just like, okay, he's going and he ain't stopping. All right, cool. I'm just going to sit here and absorb all this, you know? Like, Icarus and Stationeers. Yeah, Tessa, we can't forget about Dino and what he does, man. Dean's a good dude, and the entire RocketWorks team, those guys care. And this is what I mean, dudes. You know, everyone says vote with your wallet. Everybody says, you know, vote with your wallet, you know, try to support indie. That's what I do. If Dean came in here and asked me to play a game, I'd play it for him. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no questions asked. They called us out for being nerds in the devs notes. They knew we'd figure it out. That's right, Pythos. This is the Kerbal community. I'll be damned if I'm going to let the Kerbal community descend into toxicity if I can help it. I'm not allowing that to happen. And I will fight it tooth and nail. Because that's not what we do. We figure stuff out. Like, I don't know how somebody who wants to learn rocket science can look at Kerbal. Like, don't get me wrong. There's no excuse for having a broken game, right? There's no excuse for that. And I think that's been addressed. But also at the same time, you're going to get... Like, I look at Kerbal. This is how I look at it. So this is kind of my point of view, and I know that people are going to disagree with me on this, right? I look at Kerbal. I look at Kerbal 2, and obviously it's buggy. No doubt. Absolutely, right? It's an early access game. It's not anything we weren't promised, you know what I mean? It is buggy. But I look at that, and I look at that as a challenge. That's another challenge, because you know what? As far as I'm concerned, you know, I'd be a little bit bored, to be honest with you, if what I built in KSP1 just worked in KSP2. That would be boring. Because then I could just rebuild all my designs and we could literally go anywhere, right? I like the fact that I'm challenged here. That's a good thing. I like it. It's another thing to engineer around.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
I'm trying to pick out Aldebergenu Jorgen 789. Thank you for the tip. I do appreciate it. I like that, Pythos. I like that we have challenges to solve, because that's space, dude. That's space flight. That's space flight in a nutshell, man. You can do everything right in space flight, and the thing will still blow up on the pad if you're not too careful, right? You can do everything right, you can still lose. That's space flight, man. That's how difficult it is. And I'd like to think that, you know, don't get me wrong, there are people that have played Kerbal on the casual, right? Not everybody that plays Kerbal wants to be a rocket scientist, right? But also, you know, I'd assume that if you're younger, if I was 15 and Kerbal was out right now and I was playing it, I would not be deterred by bugs. I wouldn't sit there and be like, no, this game's broken. I would sit there and be like, I'm going to find a way around the bugs. I know, because I still do that. I would want to show that I can out-engineer this. We can figure this out, right? That's what I do. I'd like to think that's what makes me a good Kerbal player, because, you know. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, that's how I look at it, man. I'll be damned if I'm gonna let us ascend or descend into rampancy. We're not going rampant, man. Okay. Doesn't matter what the Grave Mind says. We're not going rampant. I'm sure you already got something in the works, but it would be amazing if you could get on a Zoom call and have a live interview with the dev team. I'll ask them if they have the time. I haven't been pushing. I'll be honest with you, I haven't asked anything like that. And the reason is because I know they're working hard. You keep doing you. I don't, like, there's a time to push that button, and then there's a time to just sit back and watch the telemetry stream in. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. Just some food for thought there. I don't mean to get too preachy on the stream. I don't like doing that. I'm trying not to do that lately. But anyway, Whitney, you're I'm positive your time is finite. So, okay. All right, Whitney, talk to me. What do you want to build? What do you want to get? What are you trying to do? Like, say you wanted to do a more advanced KSP project. What do you want to do? That is the first thing. And also, Also, if you want to learn a little bit about it, this is a free book. It's on the internet. It's called the NASA Systems Engineering Handbook. You want to learn how to put a space program together and play Kerbal like hardcore? This is a good way to do it. This is free on the internet. Anyone can download it. Anybody can download it. This taught me more about putting an integrated space program together than anything. This is important. So start with this. Now, what are you trying to make? Talk to me. There you go, rocket guy. Yeah, right on. I mean, we made the Kraken-proof rocket, which is how I build rockets in KSP-1. Tank shrouded in fairings, strutted together. I mean, no grandparent strut. She's a little wobbly, but yeah, it does work. So Whitney, yeah, I'll wait. You could type this out. I'm gonna just keep up with chat. EJ, when trying to launch the rocket with SAS on, I tried to start to pitch the rocket, and then it started to spin. Okay. With your KSP2 experience, it's a mistake or my design or the SAS is kind of weird? Dennis, it depends. Jim, thank you for the link. Whitney, the link is in chat, but I know you're typing out what you want to make. Like, I know you want to build more advanced stuff, and I didn't want to get into this on a Twitter thread. I know I can talk faster than people can type. It's all good. Not everyone has 15,000 hours in the game. Yeah, PY, that's why I think it's important to say that's how I look at it. Other people, like, if you're just playing Kerbal on the down low, if Kerbal's just another game that you play, I can understand, like, what the frick, man. I need the core mechanics to work. I get you on that one. You're 100% right. The Kraken-proof is boring. I prefer my rockets exploding randomly. But I don't know where to begin. I wanted to go further than basic rocket design. Okay, so... Alright, so I will start... Let's see. So, say you want to build... Okay. So, Whitney, I will say this. You want to build an integrated structure, right? So, I'm assuming you want to make something... Let's start simple. You want to make something like Mir, a modular space station, right? Look at where the game resumed to. Fred. All right, let's get that off the screen because that's going to be a little bit distracting. Update the Kraken-proof rocket to Discord. Yeah, okay. So, Whitney, all right. The systems engineering book is one thing, but building... What does that book cover exactly? Oh, Latte, this one? Okay. So this book will teach you how to put a space program together. The Systems Engineering Handbook basically details how a space program goes together, how you design it, basically the steps that NASA uses to make stuff like Curiosity, to make stuff like Perseverance, or it'll show you how to put together something like the Apollo program. How do you design an integrated space program? It's basically the manual, the Factorio manual for designing and building a space program. This works in KSP, especially if you're playing career mode, because it does get into cost breakdowns and stuff, and time, and cost and time, or cost over time of things. This is how I use this to not only make space programs in KSP, right? To develop structures like integrated systems in KSP, like, you know, station modules that fit together, right? Like a puzzle, right? But I also use it to discern how NASA's doing in real life. I use this systems engineering book to figure out that the Europa Clipper mission is going to basically, per the charts in this book, the Europa Clipper mission, for instance, is basically going to cost us billions of dollars over the next 20 years. It's going to be another James Webb. At least, if this is any indicator of how funding space programs work, yeah. Now, why? If you're not familiar, Europa Clipper was a mission to Europa, or is a mission to Europa that NASA wanted to launch on SLS. The guy that was championing the program was a representative named John Culbertson from Texas. John Culbertson was the district out of Huntsville. He got midtermed in 2018 and replaced with somebody else. So Europa Clipper was kind of his project. He was the representative that was backing it. You'll see representatives all over the place in U.S. politics backing NASA endeavors because that's more jobs for their district. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's what they should be doing, so that's fine. But I digress. him basically, NASA losing the backing for the project basically screwed Europa Clipper. Clipper? It screwed it. Now, why did it screw it? It screwed up that project because in this book, it basically says you need to develop a stakeholder expectation first. Figure out, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to make? What do you want to make? You want to make a space station? Okay. What type of space station do you want to make? Wet workshop? Dry workshop? You want to build a modular space station like Mir? Do you want to build an extreme modular space station like the ISS? Because those are more difficult in succession there. Building a dry workshop is the easiest. I said wet workshop first, but building a dry workshop like Skylab, that would be the easiest way to do a space station. Building a wet workshop, which is a space station that's inside of an empty fuel tank of a stage, that's more difficult. And I'm talking about real life. I mean, it does apply in Kerbal. Or building a modular space station like Mir, where you have one rocket launching a bunch of different modules. That's the third most difficult. The fourth most difficult, but offers the most modularity, is doing something like a space shuttle. And having the space shuttle assemble the space station in space. That basically affords you the ability to make anything. You can make whatever you want. But you also have to design a space shuttle. That's hard to do. That's difficult, right? So, figuring out what you want to do is a huge thing. Now, how does this apply to Kerbal? Well, in Kerbal, Whitney, what I like to do, just for instance, if I'm building a space station project, and I have to load up Kerbal 1 here to show you. If I'm doing a space station, what I will do is I'll design the entire space station first. And if you do it right, you should develop it in parallel. Or not parallel development. You have to pick and choose what you want to make first. So when we were playing KSP1 a little while ago, I built the shuttle first. I chose the most difficult option because it's me. I'm a glutton for punishment, I suppose. So I'll load up screenshots instead. The first thing that I did was make sure that worked. We built a shuttle, and I built a shuttle that I know would work correctly, right? Because if you can't build the space station with a space shuttle if your space shuttle doesn't work, right? That's important to understand. Okay, so we built the shuttle first. Now, it doesn't matter, out of all those space station options, it doesn't necessarily matter, which one you do, but every one of these is a launch vehicle is needed, all right? So, with a extreme modular space station using a robotic arm to put it together, you need a space shuttle first. So we built the shuttle first. Okay. Then after that, I started doing test flights with the shuttle. And then after that, we started testing out the robotic arm in space to make sure that all worked. I had little pallets that we could pick up, just like STS. I think STS-2, STS-3, and STS-4 in real life did these missions. This is a shot from one of the shuttle pilot satellites that we made, which it's based off of a real design from the German space program. Messerschmitt, Volkov, Blum made these things. They were little satellites that the shuttle could pick up and let go, and it could station keep with the shuttle. This made it so the shuttle I know that the shuttle's RCS could rendezvous with something, and I know that the arm could pick stuff up and take it out of the shuttle payload bay and then put it back in, right? So we did those missions. And then I tested the Puma integrated support structure, the upper stage for the shuttle. And I built a tracking data satellite network with that, right? So you see how I built the shuttle, and I'm slowly introducing all of the components needed here to build a space station. See what I'm doing? That Messerschmitt? Yeah, of course. Have you seen this yet? I haven't seen anything yet. Oh, gosh. Oh, jeez. I think you missed it. Yeah, probably. I'm kind of going off on it, but I think you missed my message. I was saying I wanted to do the Min-Miss challenge with the rover and didn't know how to begin with a more complex and more fun design than my basic rocket design. Okay. I got you. So this is still applicable, all right? This is still applicable. So just hear me out with the space station stuff, okay? So I wanted to build a shuttle. I wanted to build a modular station, and I wanted to use a shuttle to do it. So where do you start? You start by building the space shuttle. That's not easy, but I chose the most difficult one because I hate myself. It's good content. What do you want? So Whitney, pay attention. I started introducing all the components that you need to build a space station. And we started doing missions with said components, right? Like I said, we did the missions with the robotic arm. I proved that the robotic arm works. I proved that the shuttle's RCS works so you can rendezvous with something. Now, once again, the way I set this up doesn't exactly go to the Min-Miss challenge, but I'll explain it with Min-Miss challenge after this. I'll explain it how you would go about it, building something for Val level for the Min-Miss challenge, because we all strive to be Val level. It's true. It's true. We all strive. We all strive to look as good as she does. It's true. All right. Okay, so now I started building upper stages, and I started building a satellite network with the shuttle. This proved that the shuttle could have modular payload architecture, and it also proved that we could bring stages back down. That I could put stuff back in the shuttle payload bay and bring it back down. If you look, my Puma upper stages, you know, it's based off of Centaur, which is also an imaginary animal, right? I have serial numbers on them, right? So if you look, Puma number 3, I sent it up, it deployed its satellite in geostationary, right? And then it came back down. There's a shot of it being deployed, which is actually pretty cool. And then we sent up another shuttle mission, and I went and I wrangled the thing and put it back on the rack with the robotic arm and then brought it back down. So this shows that the shuttle arm works, that I can that the shuttle can grab payloads out of the payload bay. We can put stuff back in the payload bay and we can bring it back down. This is all the necessary components that you need to build the space station. And then after Puma 3 got fixed, then I started building stations. Now, this is from a test, but what I did there is build out the entire station first. I built the entire thing. This is us testing it out to make sure that it doesn't crack and strike. I built out the entire thing in a test save, and then I built it out to be docked together. You see all the docking ports on it, right? I built it out to be docked, but what we also did was I built it to be able to be chopped up into little pieces and then launched in the shuttle payload bay. And then, knowing what I learned with the Puma upper stages, bringing them back and taking them out, we started putting the station together. Right? And then, from there, it was just putting all the modules together and going, right? So, this basically made it so I put an entire space station together in about a month of planning and design. You know, making sure the robotic arms are a pain in the butt to use if you don't have inverse kinematics, but that's another story. We did run into some trouble here and there, but not bad considering how difficult this project actually was. So, okay. So you got to pick out what your expectations are. So Whitney, you want to build an SSTO that goes to Min-Miss and drives around Min-Miss. That's what I'm trying to do right now. So, identify your stakeholder expectations. Hey, Latte, thank you for the Prime sub. Appreciate it. Def, I'm trying to get out of the habit of doing last. There is a lot of you in here lately, and yeah, I just kind of got to keep going, dude. How you been? I've been great, dude. There's not a lot of people right now, but I don't want to do last anymore. If you could just wait like 5 minutes and type it again, dudes, you're really doing me a solid. It makes it easier. Whenever you get the chance, would you mind uploading the Tidris to Kerbal X? Oh, you asked for that a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah, dude. No. No need to apologize. I'm just telling you, I'm not pissed. It's all good. Yeah. See next. See, Def, you don't need to apologize, but people like GravShark do. No, we're good, man. We're good. It's all good. So, okay, Whitney, talk to me. Talk to me, Goose. What's your stakeholder expectation for Min-Miss? So, I wanted to build a modular station using a shuttle. So the first thing that I identified is that I needed to make a shuttle. What's the first thing that you need to do if you want to make an SSTO that goes to Min-Miss? What's the first thing? Tomas, that's what we're going over right now. Advanced KSP building. That's exactly what we're going over. Aerodynamics? Well, Freedom, you're absolutely right. Aerodynamics is part of that equation. But aerodynamics for what? What type of SSTO are we making here? planning with Delta V, that has something to do with it. I would say go even simpler. How about a good place to start would be, what type of SSTO are we making here? What type of SSTO do we want? Do we want an SSTO that takes off vertically like Venture Star or DCX? DCX isn't an SSTO, but it should have been. So I'm going to say for all intents and purposes that it is. Okay. Are we making something that takes off vertically? Are we making something like Skylon? What are we doing? So Skylon has synthetic, or not synthetic, it has the synergetic air-breathing rocket engines. Skylon is basically supposed to take off like an airplane and fly all the way up into space because it has hybrid jet rocket engines, right? What's up, Nick? Thanks for the lurk, dude. Thanks, Charles. Yeah, we gotta... Exactly. Rocket Guy is right. Whitney, listen to Rocket Guy too. Rocket Guy is the person that... Rocket Guy and Novus are the ones that taught me all this stuff. No joke. So, what type of SSTO are we making here? Horizontal takeoff, horizontal landing? Are we doing vertical takeoff, vertical landing? You want to go the Elon route? That's difficult, but you could do it. What type of SSTO do you want? What do you think would be the easiest to make? You gotta, this is the part that always takes the longest. In the systems engineering handbook, you'll see that figuring out what you want to do and then building it is like 50%. That's like half of the battle. Launching it is actually the easy part. You want to make a vertical takeoff. So you want to make something like Venture Star. Are we vertically landing? Are we going to do a vertical landing? Or are we going to land on a runway? Are we going to do it like the Space Shuttle? Or Venture Star? Or X-33? I mean, pick your favorite SSTO. Knowing is half the battle. So what I did, Whitney, when I started doing the challenge, this Minmus challenge, was I started building. I did it a little bit different. I never thought about a horizontal landing on Minmus. Well, I'm talking about back on Kerbal, okay? I'm talking about back on Kerbal, okay? So we're not even at the Minmus part yet, okay? Just take the Minmus part and put it over there for now. Are we, because think about it. You're not going to do the challenge. You're not going to complete the challenge unless you can A, SSTO all the way up into Kerbal orbit and then get to Minmus, and B, come all the way back and land, right? It doesn't matter if you can drive all the way around Minmus. You need to be able to come back down and go up and come back down. That's important. That's the first thing that you need to be able to make, right? If it doesn't do that, who cares? You'll make something that SSTOs all the way to Minmus. You know, you'll drive all the way around Minmus, which is going to take hours. I'm going to do it today. That's not looking forward to that because we got to go slow, because if you go fast, the thing just rolls over, right? Go figure. Right? So we got to go up and come down on Kerbal. That's the first thing. You don't do that, who cares? It's not even worth it. You got to figure out those ones first. No, you won't. Be quiet. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Imperator. Shut up, man. All right? So that's the stuff you got to figure out. So the first thing I would start is figuring out, do I want a vertical takeoff? Do I want a horizontal takeoff? Now, I kind of went at this as kind of a rapid fire prototyping way, like SpaceX. And this was the first one that I made. The first attempt at the Minmus challenge. Now, the reason why I did this way, right, is that same kind of deductive reasoning. Now, once again, so I started with, well, you got to be able to make it SSTO, right? So I started building something. I started building the entire design around this fuel tank, the big methane 5 meter. That's an S512 fuel tank, right? With a rocket engine on the back. I did this because I know that has enough to SSTO. This is enough Delta V to SSTO, right? And then what I started doing is started building the rover components in. I put these components in there. Spiffy, thanks, man. Almost 30 years. Yeah. I started building the rover components onto something that I thought could SSTO, right? And then I started with a horizontal SSTO, so taking off like Skylon, and then coming back down like Skylon, right? This proved to not work. This design sucks. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great at driving over terrain, but in order to lift up the methane and oxidizer, right? In order to lift up the methane and oxidizer, you need a gigantic wing. This would not work if we were driving around on Minmus, I'll tell you that right now. The second I go into one of those ruts on the flats, these wings would tip the ground and explode, and then we're not getting home. Right? So what you got to do here is, and this is the biggest one, okay? This is the big thing. And this is a hard thing to teach, Whitney. So that thing sucks. It doesn't work. This is where, when you're in the design phase like this, I would still call this in the design phase. When you're in the design phase like this, it's okay to fail. It's okay to just say, this design sucks. That's okay. That's the part where, you know, okay, I was trying this. It doesn't make it into space. This thing does not make it. It gets close, but it doesn't make it. And even if it does make it, right? Even if it does make it, you don't have enough delta V to get to Minmus, right? So I started by making an SSTO with what I thought would be good to drive around the surface of Minmus. Okay? It didn't work. It failed. I failed very, very, very publicly right on stream. This thing crashed into the ground more times than I care to mention. It was terrible. So, from there, I started revamping the design. Let's make it simpler. And that's where we came up with the pickle. The pickle is that design, but super revised. That thing's, no, yeah. Just, so, foldable wings. I did try to do that, Dozed. We actually did. I kind of skipped over that step, but I did try to make something with foldable wings, and we did get it to work. But honestly, with foldable wings, because the only thing attaching it is the docking port, we don't have grandparent strutting, we don't have auto strutting, or regular, like, and I can't lock out a robotic or anything like that. Foldable wings, I would be driving around on Minmus, and my foldable wings would be doing this. I don't want that. That's no good. So, where I went from there, Whitney, is based off of what I learned from the first prototype, that methane tank with wings and a bunch of tank treads, is we started simplifying it. All right, so I started simplifying by starting, instead of methylox, right, I went with hydrogen. And I went with a hydrogen tank, and we went with the swerve. The reason why is because even though the swerve is a heavy engine, right, it's a heavy motor. It's really heavy comparatively to some of these other rocket engines. That thing is 10 tons. The heaviest rocket engine that I think is in the game is that thing, the Mammoth, which is what I was coincidentally using. But, see that? Right there? The Mammoth is 15 tons, and it produces way more thrust, right? So you can get out of Kerbin's atmosphere. But also, you have to lug around all that damn oxidizer. I was using that tank right there, and that has a ton of freaking oxidizer in it. Or a lot of it. That's heavy, right? It's a lot of mass. So I learned from my first prototype, we just built something. That ain't gonna work, okay? So we switched to hydrogen, simplify it. Don't need an oxidizer, right? If you have an engine that doesn't require it. So remove that mass requirement. Now, we gotta make something that SSTOs, right? So, the Mammoth engine, right? The Mammoth engine here, 15 tons, 3,700 out of the gates, right? 3,700 out of the gates, 4,250 at 310 specific impulse, right? It's heavy, but it makes a ton of thrust, right? The nuclear engine is heavy. It does not make a ton of thrust. It makes 700, but it has 1450 second specific impulse vacuum. The option to switch to hydrogen that I did last week, when we switched to hydrogen off of methylox, right? That, removing the oxidizer, ended up giving me the delta V that I was looking for to get to Minmus and back. So now, get it to SSTO, right? Because I don't think landing on Minmus is going to be a big deal, right? Landing on Minmus is easy. It's not very difficult. Seriously, try to land on Eve if you want a difficulty challenge. Try to land and take off from Eve. Landing and taking off on Minmus is a joke compared to Eve. So, I wasn't worried about that, okay? Kraken Tech works, Flecken, yeah. So, now, what's my requirements? So this thing is great up there, but we need a first stage. But it's an SSTO. We can't make a first stage. So what's the most efficient first stage? Well, we toyed with the idea of attaching SRBs to the side of this thing and then just lugging around the SRBs, right? We toyed with that. We decided that, you know, it's not really going to work. And the SRBs are too heavy. It makes it too inefficient, right? Now, hold on to that thought later. Just keep the SRBs in the back of your mind. So we designed this. This thing works. It works okay. It's not the best, but it works, right? Now, I was using Goliaths as the first stage because I thought, you know, we'll go up, we'll use the Goliaths as the first stage and then we'll lug them around. And then, you know, if we're coming back to Kerbin, remember, landing on Kerbin is still in the back of my mind. Because, yeah, you have to do that to complete the mission. That's kind of important. Coming home, getting through EDL is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a requirement. And usually, spacecraft design is planned around it, entry, descent, and landing. Case in point, you look at a space shuttle, it has all those tiles hanging on the outside. Those aren't there for ascent, right? Those aren't there for going up. They're there for coming down. So EDL is a big part. You plan around that stuff. And that's why the first thing that I said was make an SSTO that goes up and comes down. Don't be afraid when you're... The other thing is don't be afraid to just completely redesign the damn thing. How many times has Elon redesigned Starship? How many times has Elon said, no, carbon fiber sucks, make it out of stainless steel, that's much better. Stop everything that you're doing. And this is the most important thing to understand when you're designing. Don't be afraid to just pull the plug on it and start over. You're in the design phase, okay? It's easier to do this now, to do crazy redesigns right now, than it is if you try to make something that works and you get it to min-miss and you don't have enough delta V to get home. It's easier to redesign it now. So do that. Don't be afraid to pull the plug on your design. Now, this design sucks. I'm going to start over. That's what I did. Now, we looked at this. This thing is okay. But, we got this thing to min-miss, and I noticed when we're driving this thing around on a surface, right, that my wheels are kind of too close together. They're kind of too close. So what was happening is we were going over a bump on min-miss, and the thing was rolling over, right? So now that I have something that I know will make it to min-miss, right? Now we got to figure out the rover part of this. Now, once again, don't be afraid to send something up to min-miss. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Go test it out there. And if it blows up, all right, fine. Go build another one. Send it up there. Make changes. Right? Okay, you're taking notes. So don't be afraid to just pull the plug on your design. No, this sucks. But you got to know when to pull the plug, right? With my other design, I knew to pull the plug with this thing, with this jet thingamajigger. I knew to pull the plug because it wasn't even getting into space. So start over. We need to, if it doesn't get into space, you're not getting to min-miss. So all these rover wheels are a waste of time, right? That's a waste of time. So don't keep trying to make that work. That's no good. Okay? So now we have this one right here. So this thing was good, but this thing kept flipping over on min-miss. So now I'll be honest with you, this will probably work if we went slow. It'll probably do it. It could probably get all the way there. No problem. It'll probably work. We call this one the pickle, right? So this could probably work, but what I did was I sprang for a design. So what's the big problem with this? Well, the big problem with this is that it's too narrow. If you have a truck, right, and you're driving down the road like a big semi-truck, right, and you turn the wheel because somebody's in the road, what's going to happen? The truck will flip over, right, because it has a high center of gravity. High center of gravity makes a huge difference on min-miss. The reason why it makes a huge difference on min-miss is because min-miss has no gravity. It has next to nothing, right? So I got something there, and then we started testing the rover aspects of it. And once we got to the rover aspects, I looked at it and I said, well, this design is good. We could probably make this work, but I think I could get an improvement on the design if we do some radical changes to it. So that brings me to where we're at right now. This thing. This is the double pickle. I took all the advantages of that singular hydrogen tank design and basically just made two of them, right? EJ sounds ill. I'm fine. I'm good. No, I'm good, dudes. I'm good. I just get intense when I'm explaining things because this is a complicated thing and I'm trying to organize it in my head and also explain it in a way that makes it sound like I'm not just flapping my gills, you know? So, check this out. Inside of these fairings is just the hydrogen tanks. It's the same design, it's just doubled. The reason why we made this, and it also looks really cool. It looks like some futuristic Jetsons car. The reason why I made this is because I needed a wider wheelbase. A wider wheelbase like this will make it so if we're going over a bump, the thing isn't less likely to flip over. Our center of gravity relative to a much wider track width, right, and a longer vehicle makes it so this thing's going to be more stable going over terrain. Pretty straightforward stuff. I built this based off of what I learned from the first version. The first version that made it to Minmus. The second version, technically. Now, at the time, so the other vehicle, the single pickle, it takes off vertically. I thought, because, you know, I'm going to use the wings for structure here, that it might be a good idea to have this thing take off from the runway. I wasn't afraid to change the entire aspect of the vehicle. Now, don't get me wrong, I probably shouldn't have done that. We probably should have just made it take off vertically in the first place. But, you know, I wanted wings. You know, we have the wings there, we might as well. The wings here in this design aren't just for flying, it's for holding the tanks together. Now, why not just strut it? Well, with this type of design, see how the strut turns red? You can't run a strut that far. So my wings have a strut going off the edge to the opposite tank. That wing is attached to this payload bay, and then it's strutted to that payload bay. It's crisscrossed, so it makes it nice and strong. Right? So I figured as long as we're going to use wings there, we might as well make it take off from the runway. Now the thing is that trying to get this thing to take off from the runway was challenging, to say the least. Turns out when you build something that's built like a tank, it's hard to get it to take off like an airplane. So where do we go from there? So this thing has the Delta V to make it, but the engines weren't really turning out how I wanted. I tried attaching intakes to my engines. Right? Tried putting intakes on it to get them, to make them, to give them more power. But this thing just wasn't getting us to the altitude that I wanted. This thing would get into space. This thing takes off. You have to wait till the end of the runway, right? But it takes off and it'll fly up into space. It's just not very efficient to do it that way. Because now I have all this extra stuff, all these payload bays and stuff that I have to lug around. It's not the same thing as the other design exactly, but it's close. So, we changed a couple of things around. I introduced this one. Now, the reason why I took the fairing shrouds off is because it's dead mass. It doesn't offer anything. In fact, I should just take the fairing out of there, but that's another story. And I also thought that the fairings were including the motors. Turns out that they weren't. So, you know, I was like, okay, this has everything that we need. It should be able to drive around on Minmus just fine. But, you know, we looked at it, and at this point, with this big of a design, comparatively to my first one, adding SRBs to it instead of jet engines actually ended up being less costly for Delta V. You know, this thing needs 4 Goliaths and then a couple of jet fuel tanks, right? We tallied up all the mass of the jet fuel tanks and all the jet engines. And it turns out that, you know, because I made the design a lot bigger, it turns out that an SRB, even the Clydesdale, with 20 tons, like if you look, it's solid, it's 123 tons. Its mass is 144. So you're carrying around a 20-ton SRB casing the whole time. Guess what? 4 Goliaths with the jet tanks is more than 20 tons, more than 23 tons. So it turns out that using the SRB will pack a bigger punch, right? It'll pack a bigger punch than the jet engines because the jet engines are my first stage, right? And it actually will give me more Delta V. So, the version that I'm up to right now is 2.23. Now, if you notice, or no, this isn't the newest one, but if you notice, I took the jet engines off and I just center mounted a Clydesdale there, and it ended up giving us more Delta V. This is the version. This is the version that I'm using right now. See, you know, at first when we started designing, SRBs didn't make any sense with a small vehicle because that's a lot of extra mass comparatively to the vehicle. But if you make the vehicle bigger, right? If you make it bigger, the SRB starts to make sense. So we switched it. Once again, I made some crazy design changes. We're not in operations yet. I'm still testing. So we launched it. We decided to scrap horizontal launching and make it launch vertically. I already know that this thing will land. It'll land on a runway. Absolutely. We already know that. No problem. We already know that it's going to do it because it has wings. So I nixed the jet engines. And that in having the SRB instead of the jet engines actually gave us enough delta V to theoretically go to the surface of Minmus, drive all the way around, come back, circularize around Kerbal, and then have this thing space shuttle itself down back to the runway. It'll do it. It'll glide just fine. It's super freaking light because hydrogen tanks, believe it or not, for its size. So it'll just glide forever. Easy to fly, right? Predominant, what's that? That's awesome, dude. Jump, jump. Bro, you don't need to take a time out, Gene. It's all good. You guys just chill. I'm explaining this. Let me finish this, all right? So, see what I mean? Like, and that's what the systems engineering handbook's going to teach you. You're not in operations yet. I'm still prototyping, even now. I'm pretty sure I got a design that works, but even up to yesterday, I was still changing stuff around. I still changed the design around here, 2.24. What I noticed is that the suspension is bottoming out. We don't have suspension that has enough travel here. And this thing, despite its super wide wheelbase and low center of gravity, right? Super long wheelbase, super wide track. It's really wide and really long, right? Because despite that, right, it still does flip over. The biggest problem I was having is hitting a rut on the flats and the thing doing this and kind of wanting to drive on its side for a second. So what I did was I removed my rear stabilizers, right, and made this back wing a little bit bigger. And then I took two of my rover wheels and made bumper car wheels on the sides, right? I made bumper car wheels on the sides. And this is where I'm at. I haven't even launched this one yet. Sitherly, tier 236. Thank you. Kerbonauts, the KSP2 weekly challenge is here. Oh, did we fail the weekly? They introduced a new one. Crap. One week is too short. Hey, we got close. I completed land on Minmus and come home. This thing could land on Minmus, land on the moon, and come home. No problem. But we failed the weekly challenge. No. Hey, learning experience, right? Because here's the thing, guys. We could sit here, and I could sit here and try to complete the challenge and then submit it, but the deadline for it's gone. It is what it is. That sucks. But see, Whitney, I really started with you have to kind of take the idea and take what you want to do and reduce that. Like, think about it like if you're making a roux, right? You have to reduce it, right? You're making something for like a steak. If you're making like, I don't know if you cook, Whitney, at all. Like, you have to. Sometimes when you're cooking and you want to make the right type of sauce or something, you take it and you sit there and you boil it, right? And you boil off all the stuff that you don't need, right? You cook. All right, right on. Cooking is fun. Cooking's fun. And like I said, I worked in a restaurant, so I can cook. And I think cooking is a good time. It's like food engineering. So sometimes you got to reduce stuff, right? That's what you need to do with your ideas. Elon actually said a really good. Like, I get it. Now, a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of the dude. But Elon actually said something that's one of the smartest things that I've ever heard with any type of engineering. The best part is no part. Take your idea and reduce it to the the simplest thing you can possibly think of. Right? That's really important to understand, especially with engineering. Right? Simple is better. That's what Thomas the Tank Engine said. I learned everything I know from that show. So you got to take your ideas and reduce them to the base elements. So if you're building an SSTO that goes to Minmus, for instance, right? Building an SSTO that goes to Minmus, well, pick apart that stuff. What do you absolutely need? Well, you need it to SSTO, and if you're making a single stage to orbit and it needs to come back, making it go up and come back down is probably important. Make it do that first. Then once you're confident that you have the margins to build rover parts on this thing and send it to Minmus and still have the Delta V to do it, then focus on that. That's what I did. I focused on making something SSTO first, because if it doesn't get into space, you're not getting to Minmus, right? It's kind of like deductive reasoning. You have to kind of chip away at certain things and know what to attack on first. And then you refine from there. But you got to start somewhere, right? The starting somewhere, that's the hardest part to get to. Knowing what you need to focus on. That's the hard part. I'm not a diesel. We've had a diesel in this chat, running up and down this chat the entire stream. You made lemon bleed. No one makes lemon bleed. So, thank you so much. Absolutely. Now, Whitney, I can get into how you would go about building and building technique in KSP. I've spent way too much time doing that because, so Whitney, I'm sure you've seen it, right? But like what I did in KSP 1, guys, was I didn't just build the spaceship. I built the entire launch complex. I built the entire complex. Refuelable pad, reusable pad. I built my own VAB with robotics, and I built a vehicle that could be integrated fast. See? What is the new challenge? I'll get to that in a second. Giffy, that would have been a good idea for the Minmus challenge, to be honest with you. So Whitney, that's what I like doing. I like to develop the integrated GSE. I like to build the whole picture because it's not just about building the rocket. Now, is it? Ariane 5's launch pad and integration buildings are basically the reason why Ariane 5 looks the way that it does. Actually, reverse that. The reason why the integration buildings look the way that they are is because they designed the rocket first and then everything else second, right? They picked that. Well, obviously, you're not going to design a VAB, right, first and then build a rocket that's you know, end up building a rocket that meets your requirements and then figure out that your VAB is too short, right? You would build the rocket first, engineer out the rocket, figure out exactly what you need, and then build all the structures to support it after, right? I like, dude, and I keep saying dude, you know, I'm not trying to imply anything. Whitney, you got to know what to attack first. And in the case of building like an entire pad in Kerbal, building the rocket first is the thing because, oh, great. If you built a launch pad and it doesn't launch a rocket, then is it useful as a launch pad? No, absolutely not. It's junk. So I built the rocket first, and then I built the pad around it. You got to know what to attack first. That's the most important thing. Now, like I said, what we've been talking about is this is how actual rocket scientists go about doing this stuff. That's how they do it. You got to figure out what to attack first, and that's what this book teaches. Now, there's a fine line between knowing what this is and then knowing how to implement it correctly in Kerbal. That's a whole nother thing. If you need help with that, I can help you. I can help with that too. But once again, that's understanding vessel hierarchy and stuff. You want to defeat the Kraken? Learn how vessel hierarchy works in KSP. That's the easiest way. It's the easiest way to do it. And that's why I knew when we... Where is it? Give me 1 second. I gotta find my own craft file. I already have a ton of craft files. I'm already losing them. That's how I knew when I figured out that KSP 1 and KSP 2 have a similar building system. That's how I knew that this rocket would work on the first try. This is my Kraken-proof rocket. It's my Kraken-proof vehicle. This thing is... Mouse, please. This thing won't break. It's not going to break. It's not going to crack and strike. It'll work perfectly every time. Because I built it on... There's a way that you build stuff in Kerbal. And building hierarchies, Whitney, is kind of an important thing to understand. The reason why it's important is because, well, okay. I guarantee you that, like, at least 70% of people that build something in Kerbal end up blaming the game because their rocket doesn't work, right? Especially with KSP2 right now with the amount of bugs. It's very hard to distinguish if it's a bug or if it's your craft file. Now in KSP1, it's a little bit different. But here's the gist of it. I'll take this idea and this is what I do. That same thing with my explanations. I try to reduce them to the least amount of sentences so I'm not here boring people to death all day. The long story short of it is that Kerbal does not have any bending or crushing physics in it. It is really difficult to tell if something is being compressed or something is under a high load in KSP. There is no way for Kerbal to show you this. So you're missing some dynamic conditions, right? What happens if you take they took the SLS fuel tanks, for instance. They took those and they crushed them, right? To do a tank test. Our tanks don't do that. If I made a clamp in KSP1 and we put a fuel tank in it and we just kept pushing, what would happen? The fuel tank would just evaporate. It would go poof, right? There's no crushing physics in KSP. That's an important thing to understand. You ever have a vehicle in KSP that you go to put out on the runway and then it just starts? Well, that happens because the game doesn't... There's no way for the game to tell you that it can't stand up like this. You can't stand up like that. You ever put a vehicle out in KSP1 with landing gear and you put it out on the runway and it just starts moving sideways off the runway? That's the game telling you that the landing gear is not good enough. It's crushed. Because when stuff crushes in KSP, it just kind of jiggles around. There's no way to simulate a dynamic compression, right? It's really hard to tell on your rocket if when you're going through max Q, because all the rocket is going to do is going to scrunch together a little bit. You're not going to crush. You're not going to see the results of that, right? So, if you've had something in KSP my arm hurts. Start jiggling around like that. That's the game's way of telling you that it's not structurally sound. But that's the way Kerbal simulates crushing dynamics. Like it'll just start jittering like this, right? So I can actually show you that this still does apply in KSP2. Take a look. I have this vehicle called Bacon. Bacon is intentionally designed to A, stress the game out. I had designed it to stress the game out. That's the big one. We designed Bacon to be able to test the simulation. Bacon is a lot of parts. It's a gigantic vehicle. And it's designed to really cook your processor, right? But if we take Bacon here and we put Bacon out on the runway, watch what happens. So Kerbal's going to do something weird. Look, watch the top. See that? No crushing physics in KSP. That's the game's way of saying that this thing is not structurally sound. Because obviously these things aren't going to bend. They're not going to bend, right? It can't. It's just one piece. The colliders aren't designed. They're not what's called a soft body collider, so they're not going to bend. Only the joint is going to bend. So when like where you attach the two parts together. So if you take the two parts and put them together and they're under a shearing load, like gravity, right? The parts won't bend. The joints bend. And when the joints bend like that, the game says, "Oh, that thing's bending. It's not supposed to do that." So it's going to try to move it back into position, and that's what gives you that. And then the whole thing collapses until the joint strength gets exceeded because it's trying to compensate for the force of gravity. There's no bending dynamics here, okay? So Bacon is designed to basically shatter itself to pieces. That's on purpose. I designed it that way to show that the simulation is good. Notice how we got really good frames when it delaminated itself. It just completely fell apart. The simulation rate's great, especially with the patch, right? But see, there's no way for Kerbal to understand that these parts would be bending and shearing, right? So what does it do? It just starts flapping around. That's an important thing to understand. Kerbal has no way of simulating soft body physics. There's no way of deforming one of these things. That thing is a square, and it's going to stay a square, and it's going to stay like that until it registers an impact higher than its collision tolerance, right? It's not gonna bend. This isn't BeamNG. It's not gonna bend down. It's not gonna shear in half. Like, there's no shearing force on it. It's just a brick, basically, and just a brick that's attached. So if this thing isn't gonna break, the joint will, right? The joint will break, obviously. The connection between the two will eventually break because all that kinetic energy that's being exerted on this, because gravity, right? The joint's going to try and compensate. It's going to try to put it back into place. And because it can't do that, because gravity is it's always present, right? It's not going away anytime soon. I hope not, at least. The game doesn't know what to do. So the way it ends up simulating shearing force is this thing ends up hitting a resonant until it breaks the joint. It ends up vibrating until it hits a resonant frequency with the joint strength and breaks it. Also, simulation is great, dude. Actually, it's a rectangle. It's a square if you look at it like this. Roasted. So, understanding that really helps make Kraken-proof stuff. So just consider that. You know, I call that hierarchy building. If you're good at hierarchy building, you can make anything in KSP. Anything. You could take any concept from real life, anything you want, and make it into KSP. The reason why I've been pursuing this and the reason why I've gotten so good at building is because, well, this is my job. I always have to have something to show you guys. So I figured that out in like 2015, 2016, right? Like, if I'm going to be a full-time streamer, I'm always going to need something to show, something that's cool, something to understand. So it would be good to go down the route, like, let's reduce that idea to its base element. All right. So if I always want to have content, right? If I need content every day, something new in KSP, something that's new and exciting every single day, right? If I'm going to do that, I'm best be figuring out how to build stuff quickly in KSP. Because if you can't build stuff quick, who cares? Like, even the Minmus stuff is getting kind of tired now. I'm kind of happy that I failed that challenge because, you know, driving around on Minmus is... circumnavigating Minmus is a hard challenge, but that's not... It's kind of fun, I suppose, but, you know, it's not building and launching, right? So... planning on watching the Nighttime Relativity launch? Psychonax, I thought they moved it to Wednesday. Oh, it's at Wednesday at 10. Yeah, oh yeah, dude, of course. It's next Wednesday. Yeah, man, I'm in. Absolutely. So, man, brother, I ain't missing a rocket launch if I can help it. Even to this day, I've missed less than 10 Falcon 9 launches. I think the count is at like 7. I've missed like 3 or 4 Starlink missions, and then a couple of other ones, dude. I don't miss a Falcon 9 launch. Even if it's at like 3 in the morning, I'll still watch it. The only time I wouldn't watch it is if it's Starlink at 3 in the morning. Then I'm kind of like, okay, all right. So, yeah, Whitney, once again, understand that KSP has no bending. There's no shearing dynamics. There's no compression dynamics in KSP. This is all forces, and this is all real engineering concepts that the game doesn't have. But if you know what you're doing, you can beat it, right? And that comes down to taking your base idea, reducing it down to its base element. You're making a roux, right? Making a roux for a steak, right? You got to boil it off, reduce it to its base element, and then start working with it. It's just like cooking. And now I'm hungry. Anyway, yeah, I couldn't explain all that over Twitter, and I didn't want to explain all that over Twitter. People just would have gotten confused. You got to boil it, you got to mash it, and then stick it in a stew. That's important. Thanks a lot. My pleasure. Of course. And once again, guys, Space Explorer W in chat, that's Whitney. Whitney is a French STEM streamer. She does the same stuff that I do, right? Teaching people about space and science, but in French. I wish I could speak French. Then it'd probably make more sense. to me. But, you know, we're working on it. We're working on it. So, yeah, if you speak French, you want more STEM content, Whitney's your gal. She's good. And she likes to shuttle. Shuttle's the best. But yeah, Whitney, you ever need help with anything? I got you. I got you. I got you with building Kerbal. That's my wheelhouse. I'm really good at that. Really good. I've been doing it for 10 years. But yeah, I know how to build. We can build in KSP. I'm pretty good at it. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just confident in my ability, you know. But yeah, that's the essence of it. Figure out what you want to do and reduce that to its base element. What do you absolutely need to get this done? And that's engineering in a nutshell. That's a hard thing to teach. It's hard to get that into your head. I mean, ask Rocket Guy. Rocket Guy's an actual rocket scientist in my chat, and he helps me so much with all this stuff. Like, ask him. Trying to reduce an idea, that like what you want to do, to its base element is extremely difficult. Just because it's a simple engineering concept doesn't mean it was simple to come up with. That was me unplugging my phone from the charger just in case Windows decided to play my system noises again, even though I've shut them off multiple times. Take a smartphone, for instance. A smartphone is pretty simple to use. Does that mean it was simple to engineer this? I mean, this is a freaking computer that's this big. That was not simple to make. No way. Not a chance. See what I'm talking about? This is a good point because everybody knows what a smartphone is at this point. That's the hardest thing to do. If you can get that down, you will... Alright, hang on. Let me shut off system noises so I don't confuse people. I literally shut this off every time. And then Windows is just like, I see you shut off system sounds. Here, let me turn them back on for you. I'm like, no, Bill, I don't want that. Yeah, I know you don't want that, but I think you need that. No, I don't. Thanks. I'm pretty sure I don't. That's why I had it off. But anyway, yeah, take the idea, reduce it to its base element, and go from there. What do you absolutely need to get this done? Usually the answer to that is a lifter in terms of Kerbal, a launch vehicle. You need to build a launch vehicle. But here's the thing. Remember I was talking about that shuttle analogy, right? The shuttle analogy. The first thing that I needed if I wanted to build an extremely modular space station and use robotic arms to make it is make a shuttle. Making a shuttle is not easy. So, yeah, just keep that into account. Take that into account. Usually most ideas center around a launch vehicle. But, Whitney, I would invite you to check out something, and everybody else can check this out too. More reading, if you would like to know more, is what I'm linking in chat. It's called The Akin's Laws of Spacecraft Design, okay? What I'm describing can be explained in these simple 45 rules of spacecraft design. They were developed by a guy named, I think his name is Dan Akin right here. He did a lot of spacecraft engineering. So these are awesome, and these will apply for Kerbal. These do apply to KSP. Engineering is done with numbers. Analysis without numbers is just an opinion. Twitter, Space Twitter could do with reading that first option right there. Am I right? Whitney, am I right? That first option? Yeah, Space Twitter could learn a thing or two from that one. they could learn a thing or two. It's true. Not wrong. To design a spacecraft right takes an infinite amount of effort. This is why it's a good idea to design them to operate when some things are wrong. Necessary redundancy at the time. 154 principle right there. To a T. 154. 154. 3. Design is an iterative process, just like what I showed you. The necessary number of iterations is one more number than you currently have done. This is true at any point in time. I was still refining my Minmus craft. I was still refining the design right up until the deadline, and then we failed. That's the last design that we did, and this one doesn't fly because the patch broke it, I think. Either that or I just suck. Could be one or the other. 4. Your best efforts will inevitably wind up being useless in the final design. Learn to live with the disappointment. This stuff gets so real so quick. That's why it's funny. Miller's Law. 3 points determine a curve, meaning test. Test your design. Don't just send it once. Send it twice. Send it 3 times in KSP. Make sure you can repeat what it does. Make sure it works. That law is true for bug fixing. If you encounter a bug in KSP, oh, my craft blows up when I put it out on the runway. Well, reload it, and put it out there again. Does it blow up? Does it do the same thing? Does it blow up in the same way? Does it blow up when you put it on the runway and then you put it out on the runway again and you fly down the runway this time and then it blows up? Do you eat all the Krabby Patties and then it goes right to your thighs and then you blow up? 3 points determine a curve. Right? Mars Law. Everything is linear if plotted with a log log with a fat magic marker. Meaning that it's easy to skew data if you don't listen to Rule 1. It's easy to skew data if you don't listen to Rule 1. That's, yeah. 7. At the start of any design effort, the person who wants to most be the team leader is least likely capable of it. I have found that's pretty much true with every group project that I've ever worked on. Yep. Like SpaceX, all the carbon fiber tank engineering is useless. Hey, yes, I mean, that's an important thing to understand. You got to know when to hold them and when to fold them, right? Got to know when to hold them and when to fold them, when to move on. Sometimes, if the design that you're working with isn't working, don't be afraid to pull the plug on it. Don't be afraid to say, "Nah, this sucks. I'm starting over." It's important to understand that as long as you do that, so this is the start of your project here. This is the end of your project here. The closer you do that on pulling the plug on the design to this point, as opposed to this point, the better. It'll get very complicated and very expensive if you keep changing the design. The closer you get to your deadline, it gets very complicated. That is something that was taught to me firsthand with mission mode. And that was the intention for me to understand, knowing when to hold it and knowing when to fold it. Mission mode taught me that, doing the mission mode 2 rules, and that was the intention. And I ended up just getting super stressed out. But now that stress, is like, that stress tells me that you have to really keep it simple. You don't have time. You don't have time to do this. You don't have time. You got to be careful, It's important to understand. But yeah, we could go through all the Akin's laws. I'll just go through the ones that I think is funny. The ones that apply the most to what I was saying is number 39. That's why I brought these up in the first place. We like to think this has overlap with KSP, but the truth is we play a game. KSP can be mastered without any of these concepts. KSP is not real life, unfortunately. Yeah, so Homing Pigeon, I think you missed the beginning of this conversation. Well, the beginning of this conversation was Whitney wanting to learn how to build better in KSP. That was the whole basis for this question. I understand that Kerbal is not real life. Just because I can make a space shuttle in KSP does not mean I can go build a space shuttle in real life. I think that's given. I think everybody here understands that. You're not wrong for saying it, but I think that was kind of a given at the beginning of the conversation, which I don't think you were here for, which is fine. That's okay, dude. You're right. You're not wrong. Rule 21 is so real. First day of bio class, the professor held up the textbook and said, "We're pretty sure 25% of what you're reading in here is wrong. We don't know which 25% though. Good luck." You want me to link Akin's laws? Sure. Can't unsubbed. Which one is that, Edmana? Rule 21? Half of everything you hear in the classroom is crap. Education is figuring out which half is which. Reduce the idea down to its base element. Oh, yeah. 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 Edmana, that's... a lot of people say... I hear this from high school kids a lot. High school kids that watch the stream. And college kids. You hear the standard stuff. The stuff that we were saying when we were 15. Why do I need to do all this stuff? I'm never going to use this ever again, right? You hear stuff like that all the time. Don't you think your science teacher knows that not everybody here is going to be a marine biologist? Not everybody in this classroom is going to be a rocket scientist. Not everybody here is going to be an engineer. Some people just want to go work at Burger King, and that's fine. That's totally okay. Some people want to be an auto mechanic, so you are never going to need biology if you're an auto mechanic, right? That's true. But the point of all this seemingly useless information isn't necessarily that you're going to need it in real life. Right? The key to all this is knowing what you need and knowing what you don't, but understanding that sometimes you're going to need to do stuff that you don't want to do. That's the whole point. I think curriculums, personally, are based around this principle. Sometimes in life, you're going to have to do stuff that you don't want to do. And you have to go and do it. I didn't pay attention in any of my science classes in high school because I thought I didn't need them because I wanted to be an auto mechanic or a video game designer or something. Turns out that I was just an idiot and didn't realize that, if you want to make video games, you really kind of need to be good at math. Oops. That's the whole point. Why do you think homework is so stupid? It's so seemingly useless. It introduces you to the tedium that is life. Sometimes you're going to have to do stuff you don't want to do. Homework is dumb. It is a waste of time. It's horribly inefficient. Just teach me that in the classroom. But what are bills but homework for adults? Sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do. It's true. Not true. Needed biology to spot the signs of mice, squirrels, and nesting in a car. It's just an example, Tessa, but yeah. Yeah, there you go, S. I'd rather do homework than real work. Yeah, PY. Dude, me too. You know what, man? I thought homework was such a pain in the butt at the time. Comparatively to real life, I'll take homework. Sure, absolutely. I'll take it every day of the week. The difficulty level goes up as you get older, and it sucks. It goes up whether you like it or not. It goes up whether you like it or not, dude. Frick that. I'll do homework, thank you very much. I'll be damn good at it, too, and I'll like it. Homework has other applications, too, from an educational standpoint. It reinforces the idea that at a later point, which aids in memory retention. I mean, yeah, of course, Gene. Yeah, there are other applications. It's not one singular thing. Just like most engineering concepts aren't one singular solution. The best engineering designs have one thing that solves multiple problems, right? Didn't you make a career out of that, studying subject as a hobby and then teaching it? Posen, I still give myself homework to this day. You guys link up a video in chat, I'll make it my homework to go and watch it. I usually do. I watch most of them. Gotta do something to tire this freaking thing out. This thing doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. You think just because I shut the stream off, this thing just shuts off? No. My brain's still going. But you learn over time to deal with that. You learn over time to deal with my brain is just a chatterbox. I have to quench the crazy thirst of high RPMs that my brain is going through. You ever do that? Where you're trying to go to sleep and your brain just doesn't shut the frick off. So learning new things, I figured out, shuts my brain off. It's just stupid. Stupid brain. Just shut off. You need to go to sleep. This is ridiculous. I know that feeling. MIT OpenCourseWare has been a godsend for that. Yeah, the MIT OpenCourseWare is cool, man. I really wish they had their whole aerospace program on there. I would be reading that constantly, but yeah. Repost. So I used to be a high school physics teacher. Yeah, of course, Grab. During that career, I looked into the actual research and data behind the stuff. Homework overall has been proven in that data to not improve student education outcomes. Interestingly enough, it's quality in-class education that actually improves outcomes. I agree with that, Grav. I understand the benefits of having homework, right? But I think that homework is just... I honestly, you hear kids say, oh, I was never taught how to pay bills in school. That's what homework is for. That's what it's for. I think if teachers told kids that, look, man, homework sucks. It's stupid. I know it's stupid. This is what I'd say if I was a teacher. I don't give a frick. I mean, I'd probably get in trouble with the principal, to be honest with you, at this point. They would probably get mad at me. Homework is useless. It's useless. But when you get out in real life and you got to pay your bills, that's homework. It's homework for adults. It teaches you how to be a responsible person. You want to learn how to balance a checkbook? Do your homework. Who balances checkbooks? But you get the idea. What we're waiting for. Anyway. Once again, fellas, this stuff is just my personal opinion. If you disagree with it, that's totally cool. I might be wrong, and I'm not completely closed off to the fact that I could be wrong about this. I think people that are closed-minded like that don't get very far. What is a checkbook? It's not useless. You learn how to learn. There you go. Yep, yeah. Who has a checkbook nowadays? Tessa? call me the last of the old school, like, pre-digital age people, but I retain information better when I write it down. Even typing it out on a laptop, that does not stick the same way writing something down on a piece of paper does. I don't know why. Maybe because, like I said, I'm from... Like, Brimo's a little bit younger than me. Her high school experience in terms of what you learned is very different than mine. Yeah, and she went to high school not many years after me. Clayton, you have a checkbook? Dude, I like writing down stuff on the books, man. That's how I do things. It really helps writing stuff down. I don't know what the hell that's about, but yeah. Like, I could balance it on Quicken, right? Sure, you could balance the books on Quicken, but if I write it out, it sticks in my head better. Also, I have a business. Yeah, Electron, that's true, but living is a business, dude. You still got to balance your bills and stuff. You still got to do that even if you're not running a business. Right? Makes your brain exercise the writing neural nets. I like writing, yes. I like writing stuff down. It's like with CTS, like, and even the KSP bugs. All the bugs that I've encountered with KSP, I've been writing down. Every single one of them. And then I take this list. at the end of the day, and I send it off to the QA and the dev team, dude. Anything that I have, and I sit there and I think about, like, anything that we isolated during the stream, I end up writing it down at the end of the stream, and then I put it into a bug report and send it. I have chicken scratch writing? Dude, my writing is pretty legible. Hey! It's engineering font. Dude, during college, believe it or not, I taught myself to write. I forced myself to write like this, and now that's just how I write. Before, I had really bad chicken scratch. Like, if you looked at something that I wrote in 2005 and something that I wrote in 2009, very different. Very different. You left caps lock on. It's engineering font, dude. It's engineering font. It's engineering font is in all capitals. It's just the lowercase letters are just smaller capitals. Seriously, that's the engineering font. I forced myself to write like that because if you want to look the part, be the part. You know what I'm saying? There you go. You're out. Architectural font is when I started picking it up, hip-hop. I took a drafting class in high school, and I loved the font on the blueprints, and I said, you know what? This was like my senior year in high school, and I'm like, you know what? I want to write like that. I don't want to write chicken scratch anymore. No one can read what I'm doing. I want to write like that. I want legible writing. And I forced myself to write like that. And dude, like in college when I was writing stuff down, I would always force myself to write like that, and for the longest time it was really difficult, and then one day my brain just flipped the switch and boom, now I write like that. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know about you, but writing makes my hand hurt. Dude, you gotta relax when you write something. Don't tense up when you're trying to write. That's what I ran into with doing that, Sawyer. I would tense up trying to force myself to write differently. And then you just got it. Then, like, after writing a paragraph, my hand would be like, ow. You don't want to do that. It's a good way to get carpal tunnel. Just relax when you write. Just relax your whole hand. Use the minimal amount of muscles. If you tense up when you write, and especially if you're taking notes, it's going to suck. You should have chose Comic Sans. Well, graphic design is my passion. I legit haven't written more than a few sentences on paper since high school. Happy Friday. Today is Friday in California. Yep. How do you hold a pencil? 3 fingers. Hi. I wrote it backwards. It would have been for you guys. I don't think I even have a blank paper in my house. I have notebooks everywhere, dude. Serious. I have a notebook. On my kitchen table. I have a notebook here. I have a notebook in the shop. I have notebooks everywhere. Dude, I'm telling you, man, writing something down. I don't know what it is. You have one in your phone. And once again, look, Brimo's a pretty significant. Let's just say that Brimo's older than you, and her high school experience is different than mine. Was way different than mine, and she's just a couple of years younger than me, right? If Brimo's high school experience was different, I can't even imagine what yours was. Yours is probably way different than mine, in terms of like writing stuff down on paper and whatnot. Yeah, Gene, it took me a second. I went, nope. So actually, Gene, it's really funny, you know. Brimo turned 29 last year, and she just turned 29 again this year. I don't know what that's about. She's just going to turn 29 again this year. It's very strange. Yeah, go figure. Yeah, you know, like, and I looked, and she's just going to turn 29 again next year. I don't know what that's about. Some weird glitch in the Matrix or something. Yeah. It was the same case with my mom and my grandmother. They all turned 29, and my mother's birthday was a couple weeks ago, and she turned. I go, how old are you? She's like, oh, I'm 29. I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, 29. Yes. Yeah, it saves money on candles. Absolutely. Yeah, we just can keep reusing the same 2 in the 9 birthday candle every year. It's really super handy. Good way to save on cash. So you're engaged to someone that's your mom's age. Yeah, I know. It's weird, right? Anyway. All right, guys. We got the new KSP challenge here. Let's shift gears. Shoot a rev match if it's non-synchro. Okay. Yeah, exactly, J-Speed. Math checks out, dude. I've got close to a decade on you, and mine will have been vastly different to yours. Yeah, well, Tesla, you're not perpetually 29. You're like 50-something, right? Like, so that makes sense. I've been 29 for years now. How's being 29 feel for you? Aglex, I am not 29 anymore. I am turning 35 this year. So, here's the thing. You know, we always talk about, oh, man, it sucks to be old. But also, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like 15-year-old EJ wouldn't be envious of 34-year-old EJ. No. 15-year-old EJ would be like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. So, wait, you have your own house? You have your own auto shop? And you play video games and teach people about the video games that you like? That's what you do? 15-year-old me would be pretty envious. Like, that part of getting old is pretty sweet. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, shh, you're 29. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's not a thing. But also, hurting your arm because you slept wrong is one of the downsides of that. My arm still hurts from when I slept on it wrong like 3 weeks ago. I think I broke something. I think I zigged when I should have zagged. Yeah, there you go, DK 88 Club, dude. Yep. The hardware's from 1988, but it's still good. Yep, 88's a good year. An Olympic year. At 15, did I think I'd be streaming a shooter? Yeah, probably, Hip. Probably, yeah. Because, dude, yeah, no, I wanted to play. I wanted to play competitive FPS. That's all I wanted to do in high school because I wrote myself off and I didn't think I was smart enough to know math. So I didn't... I've always liked rockets. That's always been a passion of mine since going back to when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I always had models of the space shuttle. But like every other 12, 13-year-old, you go through puberty and you start getting super self-conscious about yourself, and that's a defeating mentality. You got to be confident. You got to, you know. I wrote myself off. Like I said, I'm not smart enough to know math. I'll never be smart enough for that. I think it's awesome, but I'm not smart enough for that. Look at where it got me. You know what I mean? If I just sat there and said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be good at it. You know, if I just taken the mentality that I had towards competitive video games and put it towards math, I would have graduated from MIT or something. You know, you should be going to MIT or something. Nah, I can't say that for sure, but like I'm not stupid. I mean, that's debatable, but the moment you think you got it figured, you're wrong. Yep. Are you doing the Nate version? Let's shift gears and get to that challenge, yeah? Alright, so I mean, I didn't realize that I could actually go and figure this stuff out until college, and that's when I started, the second I started saying, you know what, I can do this. Screw this. I'm smart. If I can figure out how a CAD system works and the geometry and the math behind doing 3D modeling, I can figure this out. We can figure out rocket science. That's not too big of a deal. The thing about figuring out rocket science and teaching it, though, and teaching it to yourself and then trying to teach it to other people, is that it's not that any particular concept is difficult to understand. It's that there's a lot of it. Rocket science is a deep rabbit hole. Like, way deeper than 3D modeling. Yeah. So, I'm still abiding by that logic 15 years later. Just keep learning. Keep freaking learning. Keep doing it. And that's how I've gotten so good at this over time. But anyway, challenge mode. Let's do this. For a while now, I've wanted a custom formed foam case for myself. Like an instrument case that's personally formed to sleep comfortably in. Fortunately, that's not how that works. Memory foam would probably be the closest thing, but I don't think that's what you're looking for. Where do I think I would be if there was no Kerbal? Doing something in the video games industry, NX. Yeah, I'd do something in the video games industry. Alright. So, we failed the Min-Miss challenge, unfortunately. The double pickle. I think so let's learn from our failure here. What do you guys think was the biggest reason why we didn't complete the challenge? Who won? I'm not sure if anybody completed the challenge, just because driving around Min-Miss is so tedious. And it's really easy to break. Drove too fast. I think impatience got to me because of the deadline, Tessa. I think you're right. And probably bugs too, yeah. I wouldn't blame it completely on the bugs, though. We had a viable vehicle with the first version of the pickle. I just got too impatient. So, just something to learn. This vehicle and the other vehicle that we made can do it. They could do it. They could go there and come back, no problem. Poor design, zombie. Ouch. Damn, man. Yeah, Gene, we got to get better at knowing when to hold it and fold it, you know? But it's a shame because this vehicle can do it. This vehicle could do it. The double pickle is a good design, and we'll revisit it one of these days. But, time to start over. What's the new challenge? Let's just get this thing here like that. Center that here. Too much time focusing on non-requirements. Yeah, that's not your fault. Anyone here wanted to see EJ drive 5 meters a second around Min-Miss just to complete? Not me. Yeah, kind of with you on that one, Homing Pigeon. I think it would have been better to just say we could have made one that drives all the way around Min-Miss and just gone to Min-Miss and back. Yeah, because driving around was not fun. That was tough, man. Challenge was not for streamers. Yeah. Yeah, I think we proved that. But we still didn't do it, so, you know, good enough is good for horseshoes and hand grenades, you know? Here's our new weekly challenge. Kerbonauts, KSP2 weekly challenges here. Your primary goal is to recreate the Apollo 7 mission. Fly to Kerbin orbit and then return to Kerbin. Stretch goal. Recreate Apollo 8. Fly to Moon orbit and then return to Kerbin. Jeb level. Recreate the Apollo 11 mission. Fly to the moon, land a crew, and return that crew to Kerbin. Val level. Recreate your favorite rocket, either planned or fictional, and land a crew on Duna and then return them to Kerbin. That last one is... That last one's a little... Okay. Droped. Do this. Buran? You want me to make Buran? I don't think I'm not going to make Buran. I mean, Homing Pigeon, trying to make a shuttle in this is a little bit difficult. Mars Direct with Ares 5. I think we already have the rockets made to do this, dudes. Yeah, Homing, that's why I haven't built Collins yet. Building a shuttle right now, especially since there's no re-entry heating in this, is going to be tough. You know what? I don't like just dropped. People use that too much. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's kind of an easy weekly challenge. Sea Dragon, test some water launches. Ned, the buoyancy is still a little. Okay, so.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Hey, Postal, 29-month resub. So, the new challenge is recreating the Apollo 7 mission. All right, so I think, as opposed to last week's challenge, dudes, I think what we should do this time, because last week's challenge, we technically only completed the first one, land on Minmus, and that's it. We didn't do any of the other ones, okay? So I think we should just go, instead of just going right to Val level, let's just go down the list. Let's just go down the list, all right? It got updated, Mud, but it's still not exactly right. Let's just go down the list, okay? So, first one. First challenge is do Apollo 7. So, Apollo 7, in the Apollo program, let's learn about it. Apollo 7 was the mission that was the technically second mission to test the Apollo service module, okay? The SM. Service module and the command service module. It was to test the capsule up in low Earth orbit. Wally Schirra, Don Easley, and Walt Cunningham, who recently passed away, flew this mission. Apollo 7 was one of the only missions where every test went 100% successful. I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Walt Cunningham. That video's out on the internet somewhere. I actually shook the dude's hand. They met all test flight objectives. Literally nothing went wrong. Now, little bit of a history lesson here about Apollo 7. Apollo 7 was the follow-up mission to Apollo 1. That's why I say it was the second attempt to try and test the CSM. Apollo 7 was a critical point in the Apollo program because the Apollo 1 mission, AS-204, the Apollo 1 mission was the first mission testing the capsule. And in this mission, they ran into a lot of, I'm not going to say design flaws, but Apollo 1 was the first mission that got where it started to get real. What happened with Apollo 1 is that North American had a design for the capsule, and the capsule design for the Apollo CSM, the Block 1 configuration like this. It's pretty good. It's okay. It's not the best, it's not the worst. There were some glaring design problems with it that even the astronauts, the 3 Apollo 1 astronauts, Ed White, Gus Grissom, and Roger Chaffee, were like, dudes, please be careful with this. Please, 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 please. Be careful. One of those problems was using a pure oxygen environment inside of the capsule. They basically pressurized the inside of the capsule on the Block 1 CSM with pure oxygen. Why did they do that? Well, they did it to save mass. Because if you have a life support system that uses nitrogen and oxygen, well, that's more mass. Now you're carrying the nitrogen. Nitrogen has higher mass than oxygen, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's why they did that. It was 100% pure oxygen. And unfortunately, Apollo 1 was doing a plug-out test. They were testing the capsule. Basically doing, I'd say the closest thing today would be called a wet dress or dry dress rehearsal, basically where you go through a simulated mission countdown. They were doing a plug-out test on the capsule And unfortunately, there was a spark inside of the capsule. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but oxygen doesn't blow up by itself. It makes other things blow up really well, though. That's the funny thing about it. There was a short inside of the capsule behind the control panel, and the capsule basically turned into a pressure cooker, and that ended about as good as you think it's going to end. Okay. So, the interesting thing is that the Apollo 1 failure, I mean, it killed three astronauts instantly. Like, just, it wasn't even, yeah, it's pretty gruesome. It's not good, and I don't really talking about it, but there were some glaring issues with the capsule that ended up getting changed. So part of the reason, one reason why, like a big change that they made after the Apollo 1 is, the biggest one is that they started pressurizing the capsules with nitrox, like a scuba diver. And that's what they still use to this day, because with nitrox, if there's a short inside of the capsule, it'll act exactly like a wire short down here, and it won't blow up the thing from the inside out. They use nitrox, so it's nitrogen O2 mixture, which is basically what you're breathing right now. Nitrogen is inert. It's an inert gas. It's non-reactive. Well, you know what I mean. That was at Complex 34. Fortunately, it was decidedly not instant. Dude, I don't want to dwell too much on what happened inside of that. I've seen the pictures. The pictures are out there. Not for the faint of heart. But yeah, it took a little bit, but I digress. So, another thing that they needed to change with the capsule was the hatch. The Apollo Command Service Module, the Block 1 CSM, had a hatch that actually opens inward, okay? So, their hatch was basically, if you were ingressing in to the capsule, it's a push door, not a pull door, okay? Now, that was an interesting thing. There's a reason why they did that way. Unfortunately, when the inside of the capsule turned into a pressure cooker, the capsule sealed up against the pressure vessel because there's a lot of pressure inside and a little pressure outside, and turned the capsule into a giant explosion, giant pressurized tank, right? The astronauts recognized that there was a failure, and they went to try to open the door. Couldn't open the door. You'd have to pull it inwards. You can't do that when there's pressure on your side and no pressure and little pressure on the outside. So they couldn't get out. That's why Apollo 1's so terrible, right? The interesting thing is that, so if you notice on most capsules nowadays, Starliner, Orion, Dragon, all the hatches open out. There's a reason for that. Every single one of them opens out. Even on the space shuttle, the hatch opens out. It doesn't open in. The reason why is if there's an overpressure event inside of the capsule and you need to get out of it quick, the differential pressure will push the door open. It'll open it for you, and the capsule will depress. Now, if that happens in space, you're kind of boned anyway, but if it happens when you're on the ground, you don't need to worry about turning your entire pressure vessel into a gigantic slow cooker. Yeah. So, the interesting thing is that on Apollo 1, the hatch opening inward was a direct result of something that NASA had learned from the Mercury program. On the Mercury program, on Gus Grissom's Mercury flight, the capsule came down and it was floating in the water, and then a system shorted out, and the hatch, the escape system, blew open, right? And water started going into the capsule. Now, I don't know if you realize how scary that actually is. If you're basically buckled into a capsule, right? And it starts sinking. That can get out of hand really quick, and it almost killed Gus Grissom, right? So that had an outward opening hatch. And the hatch blew open and water started coming in, the capsule almost sank. So they said, oh, an inward opening hatch would be better. And that is ironically what doomed Apollo 1. Interesting, right? So Apollo 1 didn't work. It was the first casualties of, well, not necessarily casualties of the Apollo program, but it was the first big setback from the Apollo program. And just like nowadays, if you look at other spaceflight failures, people were like, I don't know if we should do this, but they decided to push forward with it anyway. We ended up going to the moon 6 times. It was great. Excellent. With an extremely safe capsule, because the design requirements for that capsule were written in blood, which kind of sucks, but that's, you know, that's how you want to learn, by failure. I mean, today we're a little bit more, or a little less laissez-faire about testing, right? Testing this kind of stuff, but I digress. The Apollo, that was the first big setback with the Apollo program, and what they learned from that is, they put into effect on the Apollo 7 mission. Everything that they learned from the Apollo 1 mission was incorporated in the Apollo 7 mission, and the Apollo 7 mission went off without a hitch. It was testing the capsule up in space in a low Earth orbit, just the capsule by itself. And it worked. It was a 100% successful test mission. Isn't the pressure gradient also why airlocks have an outward opening hatch? Yes. Yeah, Gus Grissom thought the inward opening hatch was dumb. Turns out, sometimes, you know, if you have a test pilot that's testing the thing that you made and he says don't do that, and you say, no, screw that. Probably listen to him. Which is why, fast forward to today, which is why astronauts today, especially with, you know, with the outset of, you know, commercial crew, so Starliner and Dragon and Orion, astronauts have input on how the thing flies. They help design the craft. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley helped design the Dragon capsule with their expertise in prior spacecraft, space shuttle. They helped design it, and that's why they flew the first test flight. To be fair, the cheapest and fastest major components to replace on most spacecraft flights are the humans. Posh, I respectfully disagree with that. It takes millions of dollars to train an astronaut. That's not an easy thing to do. And the thing is that you can always make another capsule. It's kind of a little more difficult and more of a long-term investment to make another person. I mean, if we're gonna look at it from a pure monetary standpoint, I kind of disagree on that one, but I do get the gist of what you're saying. Yeah, that's. But I really don't think it's wise to assign value to human life. That is not a road you want to go down, right? We don't want to do that. But anyway, there's your quick thing on Apollo 7. Apollo 7 was the first major victory after a huge defeat in the Apollo program. And that led, the test flight from these three lads right here contributed directly to getting Neil and Buzz on the moon in 1969. Look, outward opening hatch. Funny how that works. Yep, there you go, Aqualux. You know, it takes a while to learn this stuff, or you could learn it quick if you put values on human life, and I don't think that's a good idea. Assigning value to a person's life is not something we should do, but that's personal opinion. That's not smart. That's not a good way to think about your space program. So, anyway, Apollo 7 is the first challenge. Now, fortunately, I have basically exactly what we need right here. We already have it. With Jebstone 4. This thing. This absolute unit of a vehicle. Now, see, I'm wondering, dudes. Should we use existing stuff for this challenge? Or should we build it? Because I already have existing stuff. We could literally complete most of these challenges today, if we really want to. Should we do it? Or should we build from scratch? I could build from scratch if we really want to. Rebuilding the stuff that we need is not going to take too long. Now, I know building it is going to take longer, and it'd be easier to just do the challenges right now. But also, at the same time, we know good and well from what we saw yesterday that craft that we built in the release version of Early Access KSP do have some trouble in this version of KSP. You know, so unless it's the Kraken-proof rocket that we made, which we could use that if we wanted to. I'm probably going to use that to build another transfer vehicle to go to Duna, right? Using that would probably not be the best solution. no, using the Kraken-proof craft would be good, but we do know that unless I like rigorously designed something like the Kraken-proof rocket, right, that we could run into issues. So I think, okay, the general consensus from what I'm seeing there is rebuild the thing. SpaceX Audio is live. Yeah, but we should still have some time before that mission, right? Yeah, it's at 3:26. So, okay. Scratch to rule out the bugs. Maggie, I think that's the right one. No new launch vehicles. Well, honestly, I'm thinking just quite literally rebuild Jebstone. Just rebuild it and just build a new capsule, go from the ground up. It would honestly just be rebuilding these craft files. Like, I know what works. Let's build it. Let's build a good one. I report only. Yeah, I got you, man. I got you. Bedankt. Jebstone plus lander on direct. Well, that's getting into stakeholder requirements. Oh, jeez, you scared me.
Sorry, I tried to knock on the door, so I didn't do that.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Primo's here.
I give to you this year's corned beef.
Oh, is this beef and potatoes?
And carrots.
Beef, potatoes, and okay, that's dinner.
It literally... So they didn't give me a spice packet, which I'm a little bit annoyed by. Because, like, if you don't have a spice packet, you just have to have whatever spices you put on corned beef. You put, like, peppercorn and mustard and that kind of thing. And that's not something I just have on hand. So that basically tastes like corned beef and Guinness.
Could be worse. Could be worse. Yeah, Gene, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Was that, like...
Just try it.
Not that for these guys. Yep. 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 That
You
is,
like it?
yeah, it's good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm a little bit disappointed, but you like Guinness, so I was like...
Put a little bit of salt and pepper on it. Just a little bit.
It has enough salt. I did put a little bit of pepper on it.
Okay, you need a little bit more salt and pepper.
You don't add salt to corned beef. Do you know how salty corned beef is?
Okay, add some pepper to it. Okay. Put some pepper on there.
Alright.
Other than that, it's good.
Alright.
Really good. Thanks, baby.
Yeah. I gotta go eat mine now.
Thanks for bringing it to me, sweetheart. I love you.
I love you too. I brought it to you mostly because I wanted to share with chat that I made corned beef for St. Patrick's Day. So it's
I know.
selfish.
I'm on to your ways.
Love you, sweetheart.
All right, I love you, baby. Thank you.
Of course.
Like I said, 15-year-old me would be envious. She looks so young for 29, right? Yeah. Okay, ladies, if you're watching, you want to win a guy over, bring him food. I'm not even kidding. It works. And I don't want to make it seem like men are like that. Bring us food, and we will do stuff for you. And I hate admitting that, but it's absolutely true. Absolutely 100% true. And like I said, it's so basic, but it's... Oh yeah, that's a thing. Oh yeah, bring us food. We like to eat. That's what we do. We eat. Dude, Primo always asks me, she goes, hey, you hungry? I'm like, that's my secret, baby. I'm always hungry. We are simple creatures. When it comes to that, yeah, cool sex. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we eat. Yummy. Build the Saturn V first stage too, with the radial black and white tanks? Well, Ned, if we want to go hardcore on this, I do have another vehicle waiting in the wings that does need to be dialed in that wasn't working in a previous version. Where are ya? Oh, it's still in the other save. But We can recreate it. No problem. Not true, EJ. I prefer to cook your own food. If Vima wants me to do something for her, all she has to do is ask. And there you go, Lone Wolf. Now, Lone Wolf, I think it's a, this is a relationship. It's important to describe this. Brimo doesn't cook all the food. All right, it's not 1950. I cook, and I'm damn good at cooking. Pretty damn good at it. I cook food for her as well, and I bring her lunch and breakfast. Often. Oh yeah, do that a lot. Yeah, man. Guy not being able to cook, not being able to provide for yourself is just strange. Why is there an SRB on the bottom? That's the first stage. ARJ, I got good news. I got word that my interview went well. I'm waiting to the end of the week to see if I move forward with getting the job for this 2D drafting at a telecom company. Nice, Alex. That's good, man. Hell yeah. Thanks for keeping me honest with the ads, dude. I do appreciate it, man. That doesn't go unnoticed. It does state the Val challenge needs to be a recreation of a real or fictional rocket. Remember, can't use Jebstone. 15-year-old me wouldn't care about what just happened. 15 years later, though, I totally understand past use envy. Yeah, there you go, right? Yeah, remember, cooking isn't just one person's job in a relationship. Both of you should be able to cook, because not being able to provide for yourself is not how you relationship. Didn't think we'd be talking about that today, but yeah, here we are. All right, so is Jebstone not a fictional rocket? Oh. So, guys, what Jebstone 4 is basically the top part from Apollo 7. If you look at Apollo 7 is on a Saturn 1B, okay? So Saturn 1B has the S1 first stage, which was made by Chrysler. Yes, that Chrysler. Yeah, the car company. Car companies made, in the US in the 60s, they made everything. Ford made the consoles and mission control. True story. Chevy made the lunar rovers, if you really want to know. Grumman, who made the lunar lander, also made the freaking mail trucks, if you live in the US. Those mail trucks that drive, yeah, those are Grumman. The same people that made the F-14 Tomcat and the lunar lander made the mail truck in the US. That weird box-shaped thing with the steering wheel on the left side. Yeah. Or the right side, excuse me. Yeah. No wonder they left the rover there. Nice. So, there's an S1, and then there's an S2. Or an S4. That's an S4B-200. Okay? The S4B-200 here is what Jebstone's second stage is. Okay? That's Jebstone's second stage. What Jebstone 4 is this. The second stage, the vehicle stage adapter, and something like the service module with the launch escape system on top of a space shuttle SRB, a 4-segment solid. Not SLS. It's not an SLS SRB. It's the Clydesdale is a 4-segment. It's a shuttle booster with an interstage adapter on it. That's what Jebstone 4 is. So it's a shuttle SRB with that on top of it. Now, would that work in real life? Maybe. Might. So Jebstone 4 is kind of, it's not imaginary, but it is made out of real alike components, I guess. Then it does count if you Frankenstein a rocket together. Does it have to be full recreating a design? I'm not 100% sure. Is the Clydesdale a 3 or 4 segment? Clydesdale's a 4 segment. At least that's what it's modeled as. So, recreate the Apollo 7 mission. I don't think that there's calling to recreate the entire thing from the ground up. I don't think they're doing that. I don't think that's what they mean. I don't think that's inferred there. Recreate Apollo 8. Recreate 11. What I thought would you know what I think would be kind of cool? To do it. To recreate these missions, right? What do segments do on the SRB? Zymus, I'll answer that in a moment. Okay, let's talk this through here. Okay, so Val level, recreate your favorite rocket, either planned or fictional, and land a crew on Duna. So guys, I don't think they're calling to recreate the Apollo missions exactly, like the vehicles and the architecture. But what do you think for our stakeholder expectation to complete all of these, right? Why don't we go Apollo Applications Program here? Yeah? Apollo Applications Program? Why don't we build a Saturn 1B, build a Saturn 5, do an Apollo-style mission, and then go AAP on this? What's AAP? What does that mean? The Apollo Applications Program is basically where the Apollo program wanted to go after they went to the moon. The Apollo program was built to scale up for Venusian and Martian architectures. Meaning Nova, maybe Nova? Maybe stick with the Saturn V and the Saturn 1B? I think we should stick with Saturn 1B and Saturn V and see if we can go from there. But the Saturn rocket, if you read into it a little bit, the Saturn rocket, the Saturn V had a bigger brother. It had a bigger brother that they eventually were going to make. Bigger brother. There was the Saturn VIII. The Apollo program was heading towards building a rocket called Nova. It's this one right here. So if you look there, this is a very preliminary concept from the early parts of the Apollo program. That's the Saturn I, that's the Saturn V, this is the Saturn VIII. That's what they wanted to build. They wanted to build this. They wanted to make this rocket for going further in the solar system. The Saturn VIII is a first stage. It probably would have been called an S1D if I had to guess. And it has 8 F1 engines in it. 8. 8, Bob? 8. I have 8 different F1 motors in the first stage. And then the second stage would have been hydrogen, right? Second stage on Nova would have been hydrogen, and there would have been 4 M1 engines in them, or on it. Now, what's an M1 engine? I've never heard of that. An M1 engine, guys, was... The M1 engine was a Saturn V first stage engine, the F1, converted for hydrogen with a vacuum nozzle on it. This is what they were designing. There's even concept art from it around. That's an M1 engine. Not a lot of people know about this. The M1 engine. It is a vacuum-optimized Hydrolox F1 motor. That's what was in the second stage on Nova. At least that's what was planned. Now, how do I know it was planned? Well, it's very simple. They started making it. That usually is a pretty good indicator that it was planned. They started building the damn thing. Yep. It would have been insane. A Hydrolox F1 motor? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Absolutely nuts. And then on top of that, then you would have had your S4B. S4B-500. So basically a Saturn V third stage. What they wanted to do with Nova is go to Mars. They wanted to use it for building, you could use it to build better infrastructure up in space, or you could use it to do flybys of Mars, Venus, Ceres, whatever. That's where the Apollo program was going. Now, once again, how do I know this? Well, first of all, like I said, they started making it. Second of all, the Apollo program was designed to be entirely scalable. Not a lot of people know about this. It was designed to be scalable. The whole thing could be scaled up. That's the genius of von Braun's systems engineering. Yes, I know who von Braun is. I know his past. I get it. We understand that. Just because he's a good engineer doesn't make him a good person. I get it. Now, but I will say the genius of how he put this space program together was that he built Complex 39 for the Apollo program to be able to be scaled to Nova. The VAB. And this is a little bit of history about Kennedy Space Center, right? The VAB is designed for Nova. It's not designed for the Saturn V. It was designed for this. You ever look at pictures of a Saturn V rolling out from the VAB? Saturn V looks awfully small, comparatively. It looks like a little tiny rocket coming out of that big VAB door. It's because the VAB doors are designed for Nova. Also, the mobile launchers, the launch umbilical tower. If you notice, it looks like a bunch of the same things stacked on top of each other. Also scalable. You can make them taller or you can make them shorter. Or you could change designs around and do something like this. You could put a riser on the thing and have the same mobile launcher be able to launch 2 different types of rockets with something called the milk stool attachment. The reason why is because Saturn 1B has an S4B-200 on it, and a vehicle stage adapter, and the capsule. The Saturn V has an S4B-500 on it, and the stage adapter, usually carrying the lander, and the capsule on top of that. Saturn V and the Saturn 1B and Nova were all designed to be launched from the same mobile launchers, more or less. How did the VAB doors open? They go up. They fold up, dude. So see how it's kind of thick up here? The VAB doors from here up, they actually slide up, kind of like a garage door. But they don't, the garage door would like go up and over. They don't do that. They just slide up and they stay up there. Now, yeah, Tessa, that's another thing. You see these little prongs on top of the VAB? If you look close at the VAB, you could see that there's those little things up there. Those are I-beams. Those are structural beams that actually stick out of the roof. Why? The VAB itself is scalable. You could build it bigger. Yep, it's designed to do that. It's actually way over-engineered for a Saturn V, SLS, space shuttle. It's way over-engineered for any of that. The reason why is because if you needed to build a bigger rocket, building another VAB would be a big pain in the butt. You just take one of the high bays and you build it higher. The entire VAB architecture, Saturn V, everything, completely scalable. Pretty much in all facets of the program. And once again, it's a testament to Von Braun and the Apollo engineers' systems engineering. It's pretty damn smart. If we go on Google Earth and look, at the VAB from the top down, you could basically see that it's built very modular. See the posts? The prongs for the high bays open. You can literally build this thing taller if you really want to. It's a Lego kit. It's built like Legos. That's why the VAB looks like just a big cube, because it's built like freaking Legos. Another thing to take into account, you guys ever notice that the crawler way goes way out here, goes all the way around, and then goes back? That seems a little bit strange, don't you think? Why would you do that? Why not just have another way that goes around here so you could just back in, like this? Or why not have it so, you know, a crawler way goes here, goes through here, and then goes back, and then can get into high base 3 and 4? Why would you make it go all the way around? The VAB isn't just scalable up; it's scalable sideways as too. It's scalable sideways as well. That's on purpose. That's why they left all this space here, to be able to build a VAB wider if they needed to add more Saturn V and Saturn 1B and Saturn Nova high bays. Yep. That's why they built 2 crawler transporters. That's why they built 3 mobile launchers. Everything was designed to be scalable. Everything is modular. Everything. The entire thing. Heck, the pad complex is modular. You can see right here, they built in the provisions for if they wanted to build 39C. Right there. You want to extend the crawler way? There's the infrastructure to do it. See what I'm talking about? And by utilizing a clean pad design with the Apollo program, all you had to do was modify the mobile launcher. The clean pad design is basically a flame trench with some fuel lines and HVAC lines attached to it. That's it. The mobile launcher is what takes all those fuel lines, takes the HVAC systems, and puts them into the rocket, right? 39B is actually a much better example because 39B is in truly clean pad configuration. There's no service tower. There's no rotating service structure. There's just the umbilicals to hook the mobile launcher in and a flame diverter, and that's it. That makes it so all you need to do is bring the launcher into the VAB and you can modify it there. Everything with the Apollo program is entirely scalable, and it's amazing, frankly, that this got done. Could the crawlers be scalable? The crawlers themselves are designed to move were designed to move way more weight than what they actually moved, Novaraptor. Case in point is SLS. SLS is about as heavy as a Nova rocket would be. Why is SLS as heavy as a Nova rocket if it's Saturn V sized? The SRBs. And Zymus, I was waiting for the point to talk about SRBs. If you're still here, Zymus, the reason why we use segmented SRBs with SLS is so we can ship them in pieces and then assemble them at the launch site. Because if the SRB was a single segment casing, it'd be 200 feet long, almost as long as a soccer field. Being able to chop the SRB up into segments, like chopping a hot dog up, right, and then shipping it by a train and then building it inside of the VAB is a lot easier to do than having a single case SRB trying to move something as big as a Falcon 9 first stage and about 6 times as heavy as one. Because remember, SRBs are fueled. They're fueled from the factory. That's why they put inhibitors in between the segments to make sure that it doesn't blow up. Is it true that NASA based their space center on KSP? What? No. Yeah, there were plans for 5 pads, Creeper. That's right. Yep. Von Braun basically put this stuff in the systems architecture in for the Apollo program to be able to last for decades, to be able to go anywhere in the solar system. And then they deemed it as too expensive. And then they replaced it with the space shuttle. And then said the space shuttle was going to do that and when it didn't. And then they got rid of the space shuttle. And then they said have commercial crew do it. And just now, NASA's trying to get back to what the original vision for the Apollo program was. Not just go to the moon, go way further. What's that? American Mars study. The Mars excursion module was designed by North America for the Marshall Space Flight Center in October 66-67. This lander design was first to incorporate the Mariner 4 findings. Is that a capsule that's built to be a lander? Huh. Oh, it's an ascent and descent vehicle, Oculus. Interesting. But it's built into a capsule shape. That's cool. I love the fact that the whole launch complex is in a nature reserve. Yeah, Shumway, that's actually... Building nature reserves around your pads is really good. That makes sure nobody ever encroaches on the launch pads. And makes it so also you're expandable if you need to. Yeah. Making Cape Canaveral a wildlife refuge was genius. That's really smart. And also, it's great for the local wildlife, because it would suck if it looked like this. Not to say that that's bad, but the natural beauty around Merritt Island is really cool. There's gators. There's gators crawling around in the holes there, man. Hang on, could NASA lease a base to SpaceX so they could use it for Starship? Yep. The gators act as great security. Neil and Buzz love KSP. That's why they became astronauts. Okay. You can say that about any form of fresh water in Florida. Shh. Yeah, but they don't know that. Quiet. Anyway, so, you want to know another reason how I know that that these pads and everything was built to scale to Nova? Well, check this out. Look at the diameter. It's 50 feet diameter, so that's 15 meters, give or take. See? 50-foot diameter. Look at how wide the flame trenches are at 39, at Complex 39. This is 39A here, for instance, right? So the flame ducting is there, right? How wide is it? Because the original document is in feet, I'm going to use feet. But oh, look! 63 feet. It's 60 feet across. I've stood in it. It's about the size of an 8-lane highway. Just slightly larger than a 50-foot diameter core. It's designed for a 15-meter core stage. The pads are built for it. The VAB was built for it. Everything was built for it. But then we decided to make the space shuttle. Which is great in its own regard, but it ain't Nova. Right? Yes, that's right. I haven't, Geeson. Think we'll get a 2 for today with SpaceX? Well, we'll find out here in a second. I think so. Rocket Guy, my thread about the weekly challenges. Please retweet to get the devs' attention. I think they're already doing that on the forums, Homing Pigeon. Oh. This would allow you to build a large data set of high-quality assemblies along with a description of file. Sorry, I have to read the whole thing. This type of data set can be used to fine-tune or train modern generative AI models. What? For instance, is it possible today to fine-tune OpenAI's GPT 3.5 with this data and have it generate high-quality usable assemblies? The key is to have a prompt for information from the description to go along with JSON. The possibilities don't stop here. Use the thumbnail generator that is already in KSP2 to generate images of these user submissions. This data could allow an image assembly generation. Why would... I mean, it's a great idea, Homing Pigeon, but why would we do this? What's in it for the devs to do something like that? You lost me at using GPT and AI. Like, I don't... UK Space is getting Rolls-Royce to make nuclear reactors for the moon. Nice. Nice, dude. That's cool. That's right, Ordon. Rule 39 should have stayed with the Apollo program and build the Saturn VIII. The Akin laws of spacecraft design, where do you think they came from? They came from people working at NASA. You lead AI dev in Bank America just trying to help. No, I mean, Pigeon, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that's really cool. You could have ChatGPT make freaking craft files for you, which would be really cool. I could teach the AI to build hierarchy, do hierarchy building and stuff, right? That would actually be pretty neat. I just don't know why the devs would want to do that. I mean, they might, I don't know. In-game tool for suggesting parts and placement. I think that might be a little bit out of their design scope, Homing, but that certainly isn't a bad idea by any means, dude. But anyway, so I'm thinking Saturn family of rockets. Yeah? Kill the best part of the game with AI? Rares, I wouldn't do that. Rares, I'll be 100% honest with you, dude. I don't play flying the missions in KSP is fun. Building the rocket is my favorite part. If the AI was just building the rocket for me, it would not be... Going through here and sitting here and help in designing the rocket and coming up with stakeholder expectations and stuff and using it to teach people about how space programs go together is like... That's my favorite. That is by far my favorite thing to do. Like I've often said, if I wasn't streaming KSP, I would probably be sitting here designing launch pads for Kerbal all day. Like, that's my favorite. Yeah, 15,000 hours in KSP1, Ned. Like, I'd say 60 to 80% of that, somewhere in there, is inside of the editor, learning what makes the editor tick. It's my favorite part, dude. And the funny thing is that that's how the real space program works. 50% of the, actually more than 50% of the time, operations is just one small part of the flight. Like, flying it is the easy part. Doing everything to get it to fly is the hard part. I mean, look at Relativity, for instance, right? Like, who coincidentally is using AI-driven design, which is funny, right? Yeah, Homing, I don't think that's a bad idea. That's a cool idea. Somebody should mod that, dude. I don't know if the devs would want to do it, but that's a freaking wicked idea. Yeah, Rares, right? Yeah. When did NASA start planning for reusability if they wanted to go Nova? So, Pop, what NASA wanted to do, what the engineers at NASA wanted to do, one of the most famous spacecraft designers from the Apollo program is a guy by the name of Max Faget, right? Max Faget is his name, but his last name is spelled F-A-G-E-T. He was, I think he was Bolivian or something. I don't know, Bolivian, Peruvian, something like that. I don't know. Max Faget designed the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo capsules. He designed them. Like, He had help with the Gemini and the Apollo capsules, but Max Vazet literally designed the Mercury capsule pretty much on his own. The first capsule that we ever used to put people in. He designed it himself. He did have input on the space shuttle too, but that's another story. What Max Vazet wanted to do is keep the Saturn infrastructure and work on a reusable capsule first and foremost. Does this sound familiar? Because being able to reuse the capsule and being able to land the capsule back where you took off from was the next logical step, right? Don't have the capsule land out in the water. Have it be able to fly back and land on a runway right next to the launch site. So you could rapidly prototype, rapidly iterate on the capsule, and the best part is it's reusable. He basically had an idea for a spacecraft design called DC-3. That's what he called it, because he wanted it to be the DC-3 for spaceflight. The DC-3 is basically Dream Chaser. It's Dream Chaser. It's a lifting body, biconic re-entry vehicle lifting body. He wanted to put that on top of Saturn instead of the Apollo capsule, and just keep the Apollo architecture. NASA said, we don't have enough money to do that. The Apollo program's getting canceled. And NASA said, all right, fine. We'll just keep using the Saturn 1B and make a reusable capsule instead. You know, that's fine. We can make that work if it's too expensive. And they said, no, don't do any of that. We need a more tenable solution. So NASA went back to the DoD in the late 60s and said, or NASA went back to the executive branch, or to Congress, basically. Not Congress, it was basically the executive branch. They went back to them and said, all right, what do you want? What do you want us to do? Build a fully reusable spacecraft. The Apollo program's too expensive. Build a fully reusable spacecraft. Right? So they did, they were like, NASA went back to the drawing board and said, we don't have enough money to do this. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough money to make a fully reusable craft. It's got to be partially reusable. Like, that's too much. That's too complicated. Right? Max Vazet was like, I just wanted to make a reusable freaking capsule. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. Right? And then we could scale the more reusability later. Which is probably the good idea. I could think of a company right now that focused on reusing capsules before they tried to make a fully reusable vehicle. Oh, look it's working. Gee, I wonder where they got the idea for that from. Right? So they said, we don't have enough money to design a vehicle like this. So NASA actually went to the Department of Defense and said, hey, you guys have like 4 or 5 different vehicles. You have Titan, you have Atlas, you have Delta, you have Thor. Like, how about we work together and make one vehicle? Make one vehicle that can do everything. And the Department of Defense said, if we make one vehicle that's reusable that can do everything, will we save money? And NASA goes, oh yeah. Yeah, we'll make a reusable capsule. It'll be great. And the Air Force, the Department of Defense and the Air Force base, which, I mean, if I say Air Force DOD, it means the same thing. The Air Force basically said, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We needed to move something about the size of a school bus and about 25 tons. It needs to have a cargo bay. And NASA said, why? What are you moving into space? And the Department of Defense, Air Force basically said, stuff. Stuff? NASA goes, what stuff? Stuff that does things? And NASA said, all right, how big do you need the payload bay? And the Air Force went back at them and said, it needs to be literally the size of a Titan III fairing. It needs to be the exact same size as that. And that's why the space shuttle ended up being so big, because the Department of Defense wanted to use it as well as NASA. It was designed to be one vehicle that's good at everything. Problem is, one vehicle that's good at everything is not really particularly awesome at any particular task. It's just decent enough at everything. And that's what ended up becoming the space shuttle. That's why the space shuttle ended up being so big. The Air Force wanted to use it to move spy satellites into space. You ever notice how Delta IV, Atlas V's fairings, even Falcon 9, they're all about the size of the space shuttle's payload bay? Interesting. Yeah, green, exactly. So, Pop, to answer your question, they started pursuing reusability in the late 60s, early 70s, when basically the executive branch of the United States said the Apollo program was too expensive. Yeah, early 70s. And then the space shuttle project came together and was funded in 1972. It was, well, Apollo 16 was on the moon when the space shuttle program passed in the House and the Senate. Yeah. Charlie Duke and John Young were walking on the moon when that project got approved. Yeah. And they basically pulled the plug on the Apollo program, which was... Look, at the time, it's, you know, if the shuttle had followed through on its promises, it would have been way better than using a Saturn V, but we should have known that. We should have known better. We should have known how that would end. But, hey, hindsight's 20/20, I guess. Yeah. Anyway. So, speaking of that, I mean, the interesting thing, right? The interesting thing is that SpaceX is basically following in NASA's shoes, if you think about it. Like, almost to a T. Except, they're following in NASA's shoes from the 60s, except not making all the mistakes that they made. Think about it. Like I said, there's somebody that's working on trying to do capsule reuse right now. Actually, I would argue that they're succeeding on capsule reuse, considering there's a capsule up at the ISS right now that has been there 3 times prior. Just a thought. SpaceX, right? They started off with a small launch vehicle, just something to get into orbit, just like the Mercury program. And then that started working. And then they said, this isn't going to be good enough if we want to go learn how to work in space. So NASA switched to the Gemini program. Bigger capsule, right? Bigger capsule, bigger rocket, more payload to space. That's Falcon 9, dude. But instead of, you know, running the course with Apollo and trying to solve that reusability problem right away, SpaceX is slowly solving it as they go, which is what NASA should have done, and that's what Max Vazet wanted to do, but they ended up never doing it because Apollo's too expensive, right? They ended up never doing that. Go figure, right? So SpaceX is solving the reuse problem. They're learning how to reuse stuff, learning how to reuse the capsule. Dragon 1 is the Gemini capsule. Dragon 2 is SpaceX's Apollo capsule. Think about it. Now, don't get me wrong, Dragon 1 didn't move people into space. But NASA did need to go through a couple of iterations of capsule that Max Vazet designed to get to the, like, kind of what every capsule looks like now, to hone in on that convergent design. The Apollo Command Service Module, right? And then, with this understanding, with this knowledge, right, NASA took what they learned from the Gemini program and applied that to the Apollo program. And once the Apollo program started doing its thing, then it's all art from there, baby. All art. And that's what Starship is. Starship is trying to... I firmly think that Elon looks at Starship and he's trying to solve the problems of Saturn V and the shuttle in one shot. But it's funny how that path actually reflects very similar to NASA. It's very similar to the scale up from the space race, which is interesting. Clip these explanations for YouTube. Yep. Clip this live and put it on YouTube. Best story ever. I could do it off stream because there's not interruptions from chat. There's me answering people's different questions. I'm having like 3 or 4 different conversations with 3 or 4 different people in the chat right now, but you get the idea. But my mods do bookmark stuff. Gene's been doing it for me. So the bookmarks actually are points where we can clip down the VODs and go. But yeah. So, yeah, there's that. Anyway, Miff, what's that? Surmountable context for you. These guys are fixing and running old space components. Is that Curious Mark? I know about Curious Mark, dude. Miff, did you see that they hot-rodded the Apollo guidance computer to work with Orbiter and the AGC actually landed a LEM in Orbiter? That is the coolest thing I've ever seen, dude. The challenge ends soon. Nobody's perfect, man. Hey, Docky. Earlier you talked about a systems engineering book. Is there a link somewhere that can find the exact one? It's actually free, dude. Yeah, it's free on NASA's website. Here, check this out. Check this out. Right. NASA Systems Engineering. Systems Engineering Handbook, Revision 2. Boom, right there. This thing is super useful. Oh, that doesn't work. Let's get the PDF. Here it is. I have a hard copy of it right here. But this thing is awesome. if you want to learn how a space program comes together, how different projects are funded, why they're funded the way they are, and where to start with building more advanced concepts in KSP, this is the book for you. This is, don't get me wrong, you don't need to read this to play KSP. Some people just want to build a rocket, and if it blows up on the pad, whatever. Whatever, dude. Some people just want to play casual KSP, other people don't. This is for more advanced players. This one is a real, that page right there, page 13, super important to understand. Have you read it all? I've forgotten a lot of it, Alleviate. I haven't read it in a little while. But yeah, there you go. Yeah, Whitney, this is the holy grail. And don't get me wrong, like the ESA uses something exactly like this. They use something exactly like this. It's just the terms are just a little different, but it's basically the same thing. You know, I know. I learned that when we went to S-Tech. We got to talk to the S-Tech systems engineers. Yeah, we got to sit in the conference room where they come up with how to do the ideas, go through stakeholder expectations and stuff. And they explained all of it, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I know how to do all this stuff. I didn't have time to sit down with the engineers individually and start picking their brains about systems engineering. We ran out of time, but I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Critical design reviews, preliminary design reviews, so PDRs, CDRs, stuff like that. I'm like, yeah. I use this all the time. How about building the N1 lunar rocket? I'd prefer to do the Saturn. I'd prefer to do Saturn username. N1's cool, but we might not have the exact parts to make the N1 work. The N1 actually used spherical fuel tanks, believe it or not. Korolev was obsessed with spherical fuel tanks. N1 is just actually a stack of spherical fuel tanks kind of stacked on top of each other and then an outer hull around it, believe it or not. Fuel is stored in the balls, I'm telling you. Highly recommended support volumes, the NASA SE handbook. They discuss actual applications, concepts, and design achievements, shortcomings due to the concepts correctly with respect to the space shuttle. Oh, yeah. Spheres are the strongest shape. That's why fuel is stored in the balls. I told you guys. You don't listen to me. All right. So if we're gonna do this, we need to start with building a capsule, and we're probably going to need to do that on the other end of the SpaceX launch. So I know our capsule design that we have works. It works pretty damn well. But yeah, we'll go through it because check this out, dudes. I'll repeat this again on the other side of the stream. But if we go and look at the KSP challenge, right? Let's start taking these ideas right here and reducing them to their base element. What is required to do Apollo 7, Apollo 8, and Apollo 11? Absolutely. What absolutely is required for all three of those missions? Rocket, fuel, Saturn V. You don't need a Saturn V to do the Apollo 7 mission. Firework, you got it. A capsule. You need a capsule to do all those. You need the thing that people ride in. That's kind of important. Base element. What do you need first? We need a capsule. We need a capsule. If we don't have the capsule, what's the point? How can you recreate Apollo 7 with 8 and 11 without the CSM? You need that. So we got to design a capsule. So we'll do that on the other end here. Tube. And we'll go from there. Here it is. Okay, cool, Rocket Guy. Yeah, I'll check that out, man. I would like a hard copy of it so I can read it when I go to sleep. We need funding. Well, we don't need that in KSP, but the capsule is what we need first. All right, so, fellas, we got a SpaceX launch here, so I'd say what freaking better to get us in the mood to build rockets and capsules than watching a rocket launch? Like, that's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to switch us over to Starlink coverage here. And we'll go from there. And then we'll start designing for the new weekly challenge. So just as a follow-up, we did not complete the Min-Miss challenge, which sucks. I only got the land on Min-Miss part. I technically completed it at the beginner level. I'm not going to make that mistake this time. We're going to do all the challenges. We'll just go down the list.